Chapter 120. In the blink of an eye, it was nighttime in the Juyuan Mountain Villa. However, the Juyuan Mountain Villa at night was much livelier than during the day. The tranquility of the Juyuan Mountain Villa had completely disappeared. The news that someone had ascended the Gathering Fate Pavilion had spread throughout the entire Yuyan city in just one afternoon. The people who had come here were all experts who had traveled thousands of miles. The energy feast had long since dissipated. The underground dragon vein had entered a dormant state, like a sleeping lion waiting for the next time to awaken. The dissipation of the energy fog allowed the crowd to see the situation on the Juyuan Lake clearly. However, the crowd frowned. A huge Saint Spell array had enveloped the entire Juyuan Lake, and it had isolated the energy from prying. The situation inside was also blocked by a layer of energy. The entire Juyuan Lake was somewhat mysterious. During this period, many people had tried to break the array. However, the Saint Spell array was countless times more powerful than ordinary arrays. Illegal array grandmasters could not set it up. Its power was also quite frightening. Therefore, those who had tried to break the array were now lying on the ground, groaning in pain. You can't enter or leave the Juyuan Lake at this time. Otherwise, the three people inside would have already come out. Perhaps something has happened inside. Now, let's wait patiently. The Saint Spell array, especially this one, can only be broken by high-level gods. We can only wait until the people inside are done. Jin Wang sighed and said slowly when he saw that some people were unwilling to give up and wanted to break the array. Hearing his words, the crowd could only leave resentfully. It seemed that the words of the 9 divine temple were very effective. They could persuade many experts to leave with just one sentence. After the energy feast had ended, many people left. The remaining people wanted to see the 3 people who had ascended the Juyuan Pavilion. Jin Wang and the others were among them. However, looking at Yao Hua and the others, their mouths were wide open. It seemed that they were not interested in this. Divine King, why don't we go back first? It has nothing to do with us who has ascended the Juyuan Pavilion. Yao Hua could not help but say after a long yawn. Yes. The other 8 nodded. There's no hurry. I also want to see who is able to ascend to the Gathering Fate Pavilion. Furthermore, Jin Wang paused as his gaze swept across the Gathering Heart Lake once again. After looking around, he said, "Furthermore, those 3 little fellows have disappeared." Yao Hua and the others did a double take when they heard that. Yao Hua frowned and mumbled, "Perhaps the Snow Fairy and the others went somewhere else to cultivate, or perhaps they left after cultivating. Anyway, why are you so sure that the 3 of them went up, Divine King?" "Why? It's just intuition." Jin Wang shrugged, causing Thunder God King, Yao Hua, and the others to roll their eyes. "Intuition, my ass." The Golden God King laughed loudly. There was a secret in the Juyuan Pavilion that no one knew about. He was not the only one who was curious. At least 10% of the people who stayed behind to wait were those who knew some secrets. Of course, this included him. Buzz. Just when everyone was waiting in boredom, a large amount of black energy suddenly rose up from the void, startling everyone. In the sky, there were black ashes that fell from the sky like rain, fluttering in the wind. Their line of sight was filled with black ashes that fell on the ground and merged with the earth. Then, strands of black lines quietly wriggled on the ground. "What's that?" Casually grabbing a piece of burnt ash in his hand, Jin Wang took a closer look and frowned. He looked at Thunder God King with a serious expression. Coincidentally, the latter also frowned and looked at Jin Wang. They could see the astonishment in each other's eyes. The same scene also appeared in Yuyan City. Countless ashes and paper ashes were floating in the sky above the entire city. In the void, streaks of black energy appeared in the form of thin clouds and condensed into a thin ball. The silent Yuyan City was slightly livened up because of the rain of ashes. A series of puzzled voices rang out from every corner of the city. Everyone raised their heads to look at the sky, not knowing where the ashes came from. God King? Yao Hua saw the 3 God Kings frowning and couldn't help but be startled. he quickly asked. Jin Wang raised his head to look at the sky. In the horizon, the full moon was exceptionally bright. The azure moonlight shone on the hundreds of millions of black ashes. Lowering his head, he saw the black lines that lit up when the ashes fell on the ground. Horror uncontrollably emerged from his heart. Go, go, leave the Ju Yuan Mountain Manor. Leave the Yuyan city. The sudden roar startled everyone. They all looked at Jin Wang in astonishment. However, they saw him waving his hand and grabbing Yao Hua and the others. His figure shot out of the Ju Yuan Mountain Manor at lightning speed. Thunder God King and Fire God King also rushed out. They didn't even have the time to ask why. This won't do. If you guys leave, the game won't be fun anymore. Before Jin Wang and the others could rush out of the Ju Yuan Mountain Manor, a charming laughter suddenly descended from the sky, causing everyone's heart to jump. Yao Hua, release the light element to the limit. Take everyone and run. Get out of the city. Quick! The Metal God King suddenly roared and grabbed everyone with his palm. The Thunder God King also roared, and the surrounding space crackled. Thick lightning bolts were like raging dragons. Together with the metal and fire elements, they suddenly went berserk. Although Yao Hua didn't understand what was going on, he had been reprimanded by Jin Wang and the others. Basically, before he could finish his sentence, he already made a move. A shout came from his throat. His hand seals changed at lightning speed. The light element suddenly broke out from his body. The dense light illuminated his entire body in a brilliant white color. He was like a brilliant sun, illuminating half of the Yuyan city. Bright light passage. Yao Hua's hand seals suddenly stopped. He roared and pressed his hands on the ground. A brilliant golden passage suddenly took shape, facing the outside of Yuyan city. Just as the passage took shape, Yao Hua and the others suddenly rushed out of the city like a ray of light. In that instant, they actually reached the speed of light. Roar! At the same time, Jin Wang and the other two roared. The energy within their bodies crazily burned. The elemental energy condensed as if it didn't cost money. Following the three of them, they suddenly rushed into the sky. Kill! An earth-shattering roar, carrying the terrifying energy of the three elements, rushed into the sky, burning the dark energy floating in the air. Even the ashes dissipated a lot. Interesting, guys. In the sky, that charming laughter came again. Shortly after, everyone saw the black energy in the surrounding space boiling like hot water. Under the ground, black energy lines rapidly moved, sealing off the entire Yuyan city in an instant. Dark corrosion. Following a charming roar, the entire sky was suddenly dyed pitch black. Black energy lines appeared in the air, spanning across the entire Yuyan city. In front of everyone's eyes, they formed an inverted energy barrier, sealing off the entire Yuyan city. Just as the black energy barrier was formed, Yao Hua and the rest, who had leapt out of Yuyan city at light speed, arrived at the walls of Yuyan city in an instant. They were just an instant away from charging out. However, the energy barrier that descended from the sky forcefully blocked them. Moreover, the light tunnel had also been cut off. Bang! Damn! Ouch! Pooh! The bright light passage was forcibly cut off. Yao Hua and the others were forced to retreat at the speed of light. Then, without any time to react, they crashed into the energy barrier. Instantly, 9 sorrowful cries rang out, scaring the soldiers on the city walls. Boom! At the same time, Jin Wang and the other two carried a vast amount of energy and attacked the pitch-black energy barrier. 3 bursts of energy suddenly exploded. A terrifying energy storm swept down from the sky, causing everyone in the city to hurriedly lie down, afraid that the energy storm would fall on their heads. The all-out attack of 3 divine underworld experts was no small matter. In just a short moment, the energy storm dissipated. Jin Wang and the other two appeared. Looking at the black ceiling in front of them, they sucked in a breath of cold air. There's no reaction at all. TSK. The three's faces turned pale. They looked at the sealed sky and then at Yao Hua's side. they were also unable to escape. Thunder God King clicked his tongue. This time, it was no longer fun, so naughty. In the sky, that charming laughter suddenly rang out, causing Jin Wang and the other two's hearts to tremble. Then, a formless energy descended from the sky, penetrating through space and directly attacking the three. The surrounding space could not bear the burden and collapsed. Retreat! The formless ripple suddenly descended. Feeling the majestic energy, all the hair on Jin Wang's body suddenly stood up. His pupils suddenly shrunk to the size of a needle tip. His body rapidly retreated in an instant. At the same time, metal elements continuously surged out from his body, wrapping around the three. Faintly, the golden metal elements showed signs of evolving into dark gold. The lightning on Thunder God King's body also crazily surged, bringing the three of them and suddenly retreating from the sky. However, although the three of them retreated quickly, the energy ripple was even faster. In the blink of an eye, it came smashing down from the sky in all directions, smashing towards Yuyin City like a heavenly curtain. Jin Wang and the other twos were the first to bear the brunt of the energy ripple. Two elements instantly dimmed as they were ruthlessly struck. This caused the three's faces to turn pale. The blood within their bodies churned, and they could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood, which turned into a blood mist and spread out. Bang! Their bodies flew backwards like kites with their strings cut. They directly fell from the sky and violently smashed into Yuyin City. Many buildings along the way were shaken into ruins. After injuring Jin Wang and the other two, that energy suddenly turned into a strong wind that swept across Yuyin City, blowing everyone around. The pressure caused everyone to be unable to breathe. After the storm, countless pairs of eyes were stunned as they looked at the newly formed ruins, after which their gazes turned towards the energy barrier in the sky. A chill involuntarily spread from their hearts. Bang! The ruins suddenly exploded. Jin Wang and the other two once again charged into the air. However, they did not dare to fly too high this time around, afraid that the previous attack would land on their heads again. From the looks of their tattered clothes, they had actually suffered a small loss. Jin Wang and the other two suffered a loss right from the start. The entire city was silent. Everyone looked at the three miserable figures in the sky. Soon after, they felt like their scalps were about to explode. The dignified divine kings of the Golden Divine Palace, experts who had been famous in the divine world for a long time. This time, when the three of them joined forces, they were at a disadvantage without even seeing the enemy. While everyone was still in shock, the sound of wind breaking suddenly resounded in the sky. Soon after, many figures appeared. Seeing the scene before them, they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. What's going on? The beautiful woman of the Divine Wood Palace also appeared. Soon after, she flew towards Jin Wang and the other two. Seeing the three's miserable appearance, she was a little astonished. She hurriedly mobilized the wood element and poured it into the three's bodies. What else could have happened? They went to receive their guests. Feeling the energy in his body gradually calming down, Jin Wang bitterly smiled. Looking at the sealed Yuyin City, the smile on his face slowly disappeared. He said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect them to still exist, Divine King." In the distance, a golden light appeared intermittently. The Gold Divine King turned his gaze and saw Yao Hua and the others flying over from afar. Their bodies were covered in blood, and the wounds on their bodies were different. Judging from their chaotic auras, they seemed to be seriously injured. They were forcefully pushed out at the speed of light. Now that they had crashed into something, the impact was something that even a demigod could not withstand. It was already good that they did not die from the crash. What happened to you guys? The beautiful woman was also shocked. She hurriedly helped the 9 people settle down. An endless stream of wood elemental energy gushed out and gently entered the bodies of Yao Hua and the others. Soon after, the wounds and bruises on their bodies gradually healed and disappeared. Even their auras slowly recovered. Yao Hua and the others bitterly smiled and shook their heads. They could not possibly say that they had crashed into something using the light element, right? Divine King, what is this? I have never seen a black array before. At this time, Shui Xiao weakly propped herself up. She even managed to gather some energy and quickly asked. Her curious look made the beautiful woman smile bitterly. What kind of situation was this? It would not be too late to ask after treating her injuries. In the past, in the divine world, there was a mysterious shrine. It was immortal and had an ancient inheritance. Its terrifying strength made all the major forces tremble. It was said that they had even killed God Emperor level powerhouses. The disciples of this shrine are all exceptionally talented. They all possess unique or strange abilities. Furthermore, those disciples all have very bleak backgrounds. It could be said that they are the type of people who do not have any attachments in this world. And this dark array is a unique array of that shrine. It is a unique array in the divine world. It is an unrestrained existence that can act as it pleases. Occasionally, it will lead people facing the abyss. Occasionally, it will eliminate people who are hunted, and occasionally it will guide talented people. Abyss Shrine. Thinking of this introduction in the ancient books, Yao Hua suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. The most mysterious shrine in the divine world, a terrifying existence that had once caused a storm of blood in the divine world. In the ancient times, it was destroyed by many forces. Now that it had been dormant for many years, was it going to rise again? Chapter 121. Even if they are from the Abyss Temple, what does that have to do with us? Yao Hua asked hurriedly, seeing the three divine kings attacking the sky and blocking them from leaving the city. He subconsciously thought that the people from the Abyss Temple were here for them. How would I know? We're not even sure if they're here for us. Jin Jinwang rolled his eyes and said, The Abyss Temple has always done whatever they want. This time, they are probably here for the purple night flame. However, just as he finished speaking, he frowned. If they were here for the purple night flame, it would not be too late to come out at that time. Moreover, there is no need to seal off the entire Yin city, right? Could it be that they wanted to take the initiative? While they were thinking, the sky above Yin city was filled with experts. This time, they were targeting the entire Yin city. At this time, many experts in Yin city were no longer alone. Even on the platform, floating in the air, many figures appeared. Vast auras circulated quietly, and there was a faint pressure of divinity descending from the sky. It seemed that they were also divine realm experts. May I know who you are, and what business do you have in my Yin city? On the platform, an old man clasped his hands and cupped them towards the sky. A roar that contained an aura swept out like a storm. In just a moment, it spread throughout the entire city, startling everyone. They knew that the expert from the Yuyan Pavilion had spoken. Wow, so many people. In the sky, a slightly childish laughter rang out again, causing everyone to quickly raise their heads. However, there was no one in the sky. Let's play a game. In the sky, the clear voice rang out again. Then, everyone saw a huge symbol slowly appear in the sky above Yuyan City, enveloping the entire city. Everyone could see it clearly. The word Sin, shining with a pitch-black light, was cut into 4 parts by 2 cross-shaped light scars. In the dark Yuyan City, the flickering light was like a black flame. Sin, cut into 4 parts by 2 slashes? What does that mean? Yao Hua raised his head and looked at the huge symbol. He scratched his head in confusion. This is the mark of the Abyss Temple, representing their ideals. Jin Jinwang murmured. Then, he stretched out his hand and condensed the gold element at his fingertips. He slowly wrote the word Sin in front of him. Then, he cut it in the middle and then cut it horizontally. The word Sin slowly separated into 4 parts, forming the huge mark in the sky. Turn the incomparably powerful force into a blade and slash apart the sin of the world. The Abyss Shrine has always done whatever they want without fear. This time, they sealed off Yuyan City. I'm afraid it's the same as issuing a challenge to everyone in Yuyan City. The golden imprint emitted a gentle and cold light. The gold God King's words made everyone fall silent. Look, the mark in the sky is changing. The sudden shout caused Jin Wang and the others to hurriedly raise their heads. They saw that in the middle of the word sin, a few lines of large words had appeared. Everyone's eyes widened as they hurriedly looked over. Game rules. The contestants are all the players here. The Abyss Shrine's victory condition. Kill all the contestants. The Yuyan City's victory condition. Destroy the fake team, expose the real team, or defeat the Abyss Shrine. When everyone silently read out these words, the entire Yuyan City was silent for a while. Then earth-shattering screams of panic suddenly rang out. Some people even flew towards the city gate in fear. In their eyes, the experts who could instantly kill Jin Wang and the other two had issued such a rule to them. It was undoubtedly a death sentence. The Abyss Shrine. Such a shrine still exists in the realm of the gods. Looking at the fleeing crowd below, Jin Wang let out a long sigh and muttered, "Looks like it's the Abyss Shrine without a doubt. I don't know if this is to create momentum for their comeback or something else. Destroy the hypocritical organization and expose the true organization." Thunder God King raised his head and looked at the rules of the game in the sky. He stomped his feet in frustration and said angrily, "Damn it, I'm really not good at these things." "Littling, do you know what this means?" The Mei Mao was stunned. Seeing him staring at her, she couldn't help but roll her eyes. A trace of doubt also flashed through her pale green eyes. She repeated the rules in a whisper, then sighed and shook her head, saying, "I'm not too sure either." The literal meaning is that out of the thousands of forces in Yuyan City, one of them might be fake. Is that what it means? After saying that, she looked at Jin Wang. He also nodded. After a rough understanding, that was what it meant. But what did it mean to expose the real team? As for the second victory condition, I feel that with our sealed strength, we can't defeat them. Most of the gods in Yuyan City are only god kings, god emperors, and supreme gods. I don't know if there are any hidden experts here. Fire God King sighed. A trace of irritation flashed through the depths of his fiery red eyes, but there was no change on his face. Yes, and we can't inform the 9 god temples. This forbidden array has completely cut off the connection between Yuyan City and the outside world. The energy of heaven and earth cannot be communicated with the outside world. Sooner or later, it will be exhausted. In this dark city, I don't know how long other than us gods can last. Jin Wang said in a serious voice. Boom! The sudden explosion and dazzling flames exploded in the sky above Yuyan City. Everyone hurriedly raised their heads and saw that the floating platform of Yuyan Pavilion had suddenly turned into a huge sea of fire. The terrifying flames frantically spread, and the high temperature caused the crowd below to break out in cold sweat. Looks like the game has already begun. Jin Wang took a deep breath and looked at Thunder God King and Fire God King. He nodded, and his body turned into a golden light and rushed toward the sea of fire like lightning. I'll leave the little guy to you. We'll go and meet the important guests. Thunder God King said to the beautiful woman in a deep voice. Then, he and Fire God King looked at each other and followed Jin Wang. Looking at the 3 figures flying out one after another, the beautiful woman was a little worried. She couldn't help but clench her delicate hands and mutter to herself, 3 old urchins. Now that their strength has been sealed, it's not the time to be stubborn. However, she also knew that if they didn't go, the battle power of all the players in Yuyan City on their side would be greatly reduced. Yuyan Pavilion, get into formation. A loud shout came from the sea of fire. The sound of wind breaking could be heard from the sea of fire. Then, the sea of fire suddenly split open, and dozens of figures shot out from it. However, no matter how one looked at it, they looked like they had been slapped out. Although I don't know why you are targeting Yuyan City, this old man will accept your game. A purple-clothed young man hurriedly stabilized his body within the sea of fire. There were dozens of wounds on his body, and they were all charred by the high temperature. Not even blood flowed out. Get into formation. The young man roared furiously. Both of his hands formed hand seals with lightning-like speed. The dozens of figures around him also hurriedly stabilized their bodies. Within a couple of flashes, they appeared beside the young man and stood in an orderly manner, forming an extremely mysterious formation. At the same time, their hands continuously danced. The young man was at the center of the large formation. Huh! Bursts of low roars continuously came from the mouths of the disciples of the Yuyan Pavilion. Immediately after, waves of fiery red energy gushed out from the top of their heads. As the fire elements surged, even the space around them started to slightly distort. Countless amounts of fiery energy rose into the air and finally gathered in the sky, lingering around the young man. At this moment, his eyes were wide open in anger. The hand seals that he had paused in suddenly changed rapidly again, creating dazzling afterimages. Netherworld heavenly fire formation, blood sacrifice, karmic fire. The young man's fingernails scratched his wrist. Dark red blood spurted out and fused into the dense flames. He opened his mouth, and an abnormally majestic red flame shot out. Finally, it gathered with the other flames and quickly wriggled. A blood-red lotus that was hundreds of meters long slowly appeared in the sky. This red lotus was extremely large, and there were countless black threads on its surface. At the center of the huge lotus, a cold blood-red light flickered. A dark red spark slowly rose. As soon as the spark appeared, the surrounding sea of fire was immediately extinguished like mice that had seen a cat. Fake, red lotus karmic fire? Feeling the deterrence that was about to incinerate all life, Jin Wang and the other two who had rushed over at top speed suddenly gasped. Even they felt fear from the bottom of their hearts. Although they were still far away, they felt that they would be incinerated in the next second. As soon as the huge blood-red lotus appeared, the young man and all the disciples of the Yuyan Pavilion turned pale. Even the hair of some of the disciples turned white. Even their skin became much drier at this moment. The sea of fire gradually dissipated. On the platform, there were 5 people standing casually. They did not release any aura, but they made everyone tremble with fear. Are they the contestants from the Abyss Temple? There are only 5 of them? Jin Wang's eyes suddenly shrank. He stared at the petite figure in the middle, and even his voice trembled a little. Emperor of the Underworld. The existence at the peak of the Emperor of the Underworld has already touched the barrier of the Emperor God. This is really bad. Thunder God King also looked serious. The petite figure standing in the middle looked to be no more than 10 years old. She was wearing a black and white dress, revealing her snow-white shoulders. Her hands were completely covered by her slender sleeves. Her short wine-red hair was draped over her shoulders, and 4 long strands of black hair hung in front of her chest and behind her back. On her young and tender face, there was a playful look. Those wine-red crystal eyes blinked gently, revealing a bit of liveliness. She did not have the sense of vicissitudes of those old monsters at all. Fake red lotus karmic fire? For ordinary people, you have done very well, but this is still not enough. The girl blinked her eyes and smiled slightly. Whether it is enough or not, we will only know after we try. The eyes of the young man from the Yuyan Pavilion flashed coldly. He did not believe that the red lotus karmic fire, which was formed by condensing all the energy and half of the life force of everyone present, would not be a threat to the 5 people in front of him. Go! The young man suddenly pointed his finger at the girl on the platform and roared furiously. In the sky, the huge blood-red lotus immediately emitted an incomparably bright blood-red light. Flames that covered the sky and covered the earth surged out from the flame at the heart of the lotus. A sea of fire that was 10,000 feet in size shot towards the latter with lightning-like speed. Wherever the flames passed, even the space was burned and black cracks were formed. Looking at the sea of fire that was approaching with a destructive force, the girl laughed delicately. With your strength that has just entered the divine underworld. If an underworld king expert were to attack, he might really be able to cause some damage to me. A man beside the girl took a step forward. His finger gently drew in front of him, and the space was torn apart like a piece of paper. A pitch-black spatial crack that looked like a pocket appeared out of nowhere, and a monstrous sea of fire surged into the empty space. The sea of fire surged into the empty space. The man rubbed his hand, and the spatial crack strangely disappeared. Lifting his head, his hand aimed at the huge blood lotus from afar, after which he suddenly clenched his fist. Bang! After the man clenched his fist, the surrounding space immediately fluctuated intensely. The space where the hot blood lotus was located also swiftly distorted. Faintly, spatial folds appeared, as though it had broken off. Crack! The folds had just appeared when a pitch-black fault directly appeared in the space. The huge blood lotus was forcefully swallowed into the pitch-black crack by the huge mouth that had been opened in the distorted space. As soon as the blood lotus entered the empty space, a huge wave of fire erupted, burning the surrounding space to ashes. The huge lotus shot out from the empty space, bringing with it an unparalleled sonic boom as it charged towards the man. The man's expression did not change even a little when he saw the blood lotus rushing over. His raised hand suddenly clenched. Crack! 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 The space swiftly distorted, exploding like a vortex. Numerous folds continuously appeared. Each time a spatial vortex formed by folds appeared, it would appear in the space where the huge blood lotus was located. Hence, when the latter was 100 feet in front of the man, a couple of its huge petals fell off and were swallowed into the empty space. By the time the blood lotus reached the platform, only the lotus core and the demonic flame were left. Immediately, the young man from the serene flame pavilion laughed out loud. His hand seal suddenly changed as he cried out with a ferocious expression. Bang! The blood lotus and the flames suddenly exploded in front of the shocked gazes of the entire city. At this moment, an earth-shaking thunder-like explosion resounded over the entire serene flame city. The loud thunder exploded in the sky. At this moment, the sky above serene flame city seemed to have turned into a sea of flames in an instant. The hot blood-colored flame turned into a wave of fire that spread in a circular arc. At this moment, the energy spread to the ground, causing serene flame city to tremble violently. Numerous huge cracks spread along the mountain walls. Many buildings collapsed due to the earthquake and even began to burn. It was just like the end of the world. The turbulent wave of fire formed a huge blood lotus shape in the sky above Serene Flame City. The entire Serene Flame City could clearly see it. Even the huge seal was swept away and torn apart. Countless people lifted their heads, their faces filled with shock as they looked at the blood lotus that bloomed in the sky. Even though they were far away, they could still feel that the air seemed to have suddenly become much hotter. Jin Wang and the other two figures flashed and appeared on the buildings on the ground of Serene Flame City. As they looked at the huge blood lotus that spanned across the sky and felt the spreading wave of fire, they could not help but feel their mouths turn dry. This power was really a little too terrifying. The Serene Flame Pavilion has indeed spent a lot of time preparing for the Purple Night Dark Flame. However, our opponents are 4 Underworld Kings and a peak Underworld Emperor. Jin Wang swallowed his saliva as sweat flowed down his face. Just like what the girl had said, if an Underworld King expert was to use this attack, it might really cause harm to the 5 of them. Sigh, this is really troublesome. Letting out a soft sigh, the Thunder God King cast his gaze at the gradually dissipating blood lotus. Over there, the wave of fire had already begun to slowly dissipate. Numerous gazes gathered on the crumbling sky. That was the place where the blood lotus bloomed. At such a close distance, even an Underworld King expert would find it hard to completely withstand the destructive power of the explosion. As time passed, the wave of fire that covered half of the sky above Serene Flame City finally gradually dissipated. As for the 5 figures that appeared in their line of sight, even though Jin Wang and the others had already expected it, they still could not help but shake their heads with a bitter smile. As the smoke and dust scattered, the spatial cracks that had been torn apart in the sky slowly healed as the fire wave retreated. Xiao Qian's eyes looked at the 5 people, but even his robes did not change at all. A thick energy barrier stood in front of the 5 of them, completely blocking the destructive attack wave. Clap, clap. The silence lasted for a moment. Finally, a clear clapping sound rang out. Immediately, everyone turned their gazes over. Jin Jinwang also raised his head and looked at the girl. At this moment, she was smiling sweetly, her delicate hands gracefully clapping. However, the entire city was dead silent. All right, let the game begin. That sweet smile caused the hearts of countless people to skip a beat, and they slowly sank back into their chests. Chapter 122. At the same time, in the Juyuan Pavilion, Yun Nuoxing's forehead was covered in sweat. He was looking at the woman sitting opposite him. His jade-like hand was holding a chess piece, and he slowly placed it down. Wait! Yun Nuoxing quickly stretched out his hand and shouted in panic. A few drops of cold sweat fell from his forehead. The girl's jade-like hand paused. Her beautiful eyes were still looking at him without the slightest bit of spirit. That beautiful face of hers was filled with an unquestionable expression, causing him to involuntarily smile bitterly. He sighed and shook his head. It's nothing. You can continue. Just as her voice faded, the chess piece in her jade-like hand finally landed on the chessboard, emitting a crisp sound. Checkmate. At the same time, the woman's cold voice sounded like she was passing judgment. Ah! The voice of judgment made Yun Nuoxing hold his head in pain. He raised his head and twisted his neck like a madman. His handsome face was slightly distorted. Bang! In the end, his head hit the stone table. He was completely still, as if he was dead. The woman blinked slightly. She held the teacup in her slender hand and took a sip. She continued to look at Yun Nuoxing indifferently. Damn it. 26 games, all lost. Yun Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he muttered in his heart. What the hell was this? Formations were important in playing chess. As the saying goes, playing chess is like carving formations. However, in his battle with her, he only saw a wild beast tearing his formations apart. I'm not playing anymore. Suddenly, Yun Nuoxing stood up in exasperation. He held his head and twisted around. His handsome face was still red, and even his eyes were misty. You're bullying me. Seeing him angry like a child who lost a game, a different emotion flashed across the woman's eyes for the first time. However, she quickly concealed it and didn't let Yun Nuoxing see it. Yes. The woman nodded and stood up slowly. Her long hair that was spread on the ground slowly rose as she stood up. In the end, it hung down to her heels. It was as black as a mirror. Seeing her stand up, Yun Nuoxing's heart thumped. He quickly stopped dancing and sat down. He watched nervously as the woman slowly walked over and hugged his head. A pair of jade hands hugged his head. The back of his head touched something soft, causing his heart to skip a beat. It was as if fireworks had exploded. His handsome face turned red, and he stared blankly in front of him. What's wrong? Yun Nuoxing's panicked thoughts slowly circled in his heart. He lowered his gaze slightly and saw that the woman's cold and soft hair seemed to have come alive. It slowly wrapped around his arm, body, and her jade-like hands continuously stroked his face, causing his heart to be slightly intoxicated and alarmed. What was going on? If you have time in the future, play chess with me. A gentle voice echoed in Yun Nuoxing's ears, causing him to be startled. That jade-like hand slowly touched his forehead. The 7-colored light illuminated that jade-like hand, making it look like a perfect piece of art. That light also slowly penetrated into Yun Nuoxing's mind, causing him to tremble. His body tensed up, but he didn't feel anything strange. He only felt that his consciousness was gradually becoming blurry, and in the end, he seemed to see a flawless face pressing against him. Buzz. The seal that filled the entire heart-gathering lake finally dissipated completely at this moment. Xueqing and Murong Xuego, who were sitting cross-legged in front of the Juyuan Pavilion, suddenly opened their eyes. At this moment, with the disappearance of the seal, they finally saw what was in the pavilion. However, before they could take a closer look, they were stunned. What is this? Looking at the huge pitch-black energy shield in the sky, Xueqing and Mei Mao were shocked. Their delicate hands couldn't help but cover their slightly open mouth. Murong Shuegu also couldn't help but gasp. Oh my God! What happened in Yuyan City during the period when we were in here? Looking at the pitch-black energy shield that covered the entire Yuyan City, Murong Shuegu widened her eyes in shock. Young Master Yun, young Master Yun. The shock lasted for a while. Xueqing suddenly regained her senses and looked at Yun Nuoxing. Seeing that he had fallen asleep on the stone table, she couldn't help but be stunned. She quickly called out and glanced at the shore of the heart-gathering lake. There was no one there. Although she didn't know what had happened, her intuition told her that it wasn't anything good. Nuoxing, Brother Yun, wake up. Something big has happened. Let's go. Your house has exploded. Murong Shuegu also clasped her hands by her mouth and shouted loudly. However, she was glared at by Xueqing. How could you shout like that? Laughing embarrassedly, Murong Shuegu waved her hand and shouted together with Xueqing. Their soul power also spread towards the small pavilion. Now, they weren't sure if the 9 steps to heaven could be climbed, so they didn't dare to go up. Yin Nuoxing's ears kept catching the screams. His body trembled slightly. His consciousness also slowly woke up from the screams. He opened his eyes in a daze and raised his head. Looking into the distance, he saw wisps of smoke rising. The energy between heaven and earth fluctuated continuously. His eyes flashed with confusion. Young Master Yin. His gaze paused. Hearing a familiar voice, Yin Nuoxing turned his head and saw Xueqing waving at him excitedly. He quickly regained his senses and wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth. He stood up and walked out of the Jiyuan pavilion. However, after taking 2 steps, he stopped. What the hell is this? The sky-like pitch-black energy barrier broke into his line of sight. Like the first reaction of the 2 of them, they were stunned. Their eyes were filled with shock. Whose array is this? Is it set up by a Grandmaster? It seems to cover the entire Yuyan City. Slowly walking down the 9 steps to heaven, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but smile. However, he felt a little strange. Yuyan City was tens of thousands of miles long and wide. For an array to be set up to such a large extent, it must be at least a god-level master or grandmaster. This is the rhythm of an accident. Look at the sky in the distance. Boom! Murong Shuegu just raised her hand and pointed at the platform. Suddenly, a shocking muffled thunder resounded throughout the entire Yuyan City. The huge blood lotus stood in the sky. Terrifying waves of fire rose slowly like the sun. This made the 3 of them suck in a breath of cold air. This wasn't the rhythm of an accident. Something had already happened. Let's go and take a look. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He caught sight of Jin Jinwang and the other 2 from the corner of his eyes. He turned around and shouted. His figure leaped into the air and flew over. Behind him, Xueqing and Murong Shui looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They hurriedly followed. Divine King, it took less than half an hour to travel from Juyuan Mountain Villa to Jin Jinwang and the other 2 with the help of light elements. However, Yin Nuoxing didn't completely expose himself. Xueqing and Murong Shui thought that it was the combined speed of the 3 of them, although they still felt that it was too fast. When Yin Nuoxing arrived in front of Jin Jinwang and the other 2, the former shouted. Her heart suddenly thumped. Oh no, he thought that she was Yusin and directly called out. Hearing the shout, Jin Jinwang also hurriedly turned around. When he saw Yin Nuoxing and the other 2, he couldn't help but be stunned. He hurriedly waved his hand and grabbed the 3 of them. He frowned and couldn't help but scold them softly. The entire Yuyan City is in chaos now. What are you 3 doing here instead of taking refuge? Chaos? Taking refuge? What happened in Yuyan City? Yin Nuoxing paused and couldn't help but ask. Then he saw Jin Jinwang's astonished gaze and hurriedly waved his hand, saying, We just came out from Juyuan Pavilion. Hearing this, Jin Jinwang was stunned. His golden eyes looked at the 3 of them in disbelief, saying, So it was really the 3 of you who went to Juyuan Pavilion? Yes, Divine King Senior, let's not talk about this. What happened in Yuyan City? How could there be such a huge formation? Is Yuyan City isolated from the outside world? Yin Nuoxing casually nodded. Just as he was about to say something, Xueqing beat him to it and asked. Jin Wang scratched his head and sighed in distress. He raised his head and looked at the sky. There, the girls' group of 5 and the experts of the Yuyan Pavilion were no longer there. Half an hour ago, the 5 of them had scattered throughout the city. The experts of the Yuyan Pavilion and many independent cultivators had joined forces to fight against the girl, while the other gods dealt with the remaining 4. Fortunately, there were many major forces here. Some of them had brought their sex weapons, so the situation wasn't one-sided. However, looking at the situation, they wouldn't be able to hold on for long. As Jin Wang and the other 2 were injured at the beginning of the battle, they could only help the crowd take refuge. He told Yin Nuoxing and the other 2 everything in one breath. After listening, the 3 of them sucked in a breath of cold air, as expected. Their eyes were filled with shock. Abyss Shrine. Yin Nuoxing murmured softly and frowned. He had never seen this shrine in the ancient books, so he didn't know what kind of force it was. Destroy the hypocritical group and expose the real one. Xueqing also frowned. She exchanged glances with Yin Nuoxing and the other 2. The 3 of them shook their heads. They roughly understood the meaning, but they didn't know what it was referring to. I'm going somewhere. You 2 can stay here for now. Yin Nuoxing said with a smile as he patted Xueqing and Murong Xuega's shoulders. Without waiting for their reply, he quickly jumped down. His figure flashed a few times and disappeared from their sight. Is there no other way to end this game apart from these 2 methods? Looking at Yin Nuoxing's disappearing figure, Murong Xuega sighed. She looked at the huge battle circles in the distant sky and then looked at Jin Wang. She couldn't help but ask. Even if all the experts in Yuyan City worked together, they wouldn't be able to defeat those 5 people. According to the first victory condition, we have to destroy the hypocritical group. We don't understand it, so we can put aside. As for the second victory condition, we have to defeat the 5 people from the Abyss Shrine. Unless there is a force here that has brought a peak divine tool or even an eternal divine weapon, we won't stand a chance. Taking turns to fight against those experts is meaningless. Jin Wang sighed in distress. Murong Xuega and Xueqing were silent. They didn't know how powerful 4 underworld kings and 1 underworld emperor were. However, they could understand one thing from the fact that all the experts in the city had been mobilized. As for the other way to end this game, Jin Wang looked at the inverted energy shield in the sky and the huge forbidden magic formation that was slowly rotating on the ground. He pondered for a while and nodded firmly, saying, Yes, but it's not very likely. Senior Divine King, at this juncture, don't keep us in suspense. Just tell us what method you have. Xueqing was also a little anxious. She quickly asked. Jin Wang nodded. His hand slid down from his sleeve. He pointed at the huge energy shield in the sky and then at the forbidden magic formation below. He said in a deep voice, Break the biggest rule of this game. Break this forbidden magic formation. Chapter 123. Deciphering this array. Xueqing was shocked. Mei Mao also nodded after thinking for a while. This was indeed a good idea. After deciphering this array, it was fine if they didn't want to participate. The people of the Abyss Shrine couldn't do anything against so many people. Moreover, they could contact their respective forces. At that time, it would be the other side's turn to be nervous. But this level of array can only be weaved by a grandmaster. It's even more difficult to decipher it. At least, one's attainment in array formation can't be lower than the weaver's. However, thinking of the difficulty of deciphering the array, Murong Xuega couldn't help but sigh. Jin Wang also nodded in distress. He couldn't help but murmur, if only old Xue was here. The water shrine's attainment in array formation is very high. Old Xue might even reach the level of a grandmaster. But this time, the water shrine only sent an elder to accompany Xiao Xia to gain experience. After all, after the young heroes competition, they didn't return to the shrine, nor did they ask for reinforcements. Old Xue and the others were also in seclusion at that time. Thunder God King sighed. Damn it, at least we can send our divine sense outside. Fire God King couldn't help but grit his teeth. I'll go back for a while. Xiao Ying and Yao Hua have just returned to the manor. Find that elder and see if you can find UXIN. I don't know where that girl is. Jin Wang thought for a while and said, UXIN? It's time to summon this human weapon. I always feel that when I think of that girl, we can solve this problem this time. Hearing this name, Fire God King and Thunder God King nodded at the same time. It was indeed the case. They had such a feeling. Xu Etching and Mei Mao looked at the three God Kings strangely. They didn't know who this UXIN was. After leaving Jin Wang and the others, Yin Nuoxing went straight to the center of Yuyin City. She even used the light element and used Ling Hong's sword to conceal her aura, afraid of being discovered by the people above. Yuyin City is in chaos. I wonder how Sister Yuyin and the others are doing. As this thought flashed through her mind, Yin Nuoxing clenched her teeth and increased the output of light essence by quite a bit. Like a ray of light, she rushed out, and the energy in her body rapidly disappeared. However, using the light element to hasten their journey, they arrived at the inn in a few minutes. Fortunately, the battlefield was mostly in the northern city of Hidden Flame. The place where they had settled down was slightly south of the center. Along the way, he saw quite a few people fleeing towards the south, while many powerhouses were rushing towards the north at top speed. When she found the hotel room, Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath and hurriedly rushed in from the balcony. Just as she was about to shout, she froze in shock. In the room, Yuyin, Ming, and Purple Soul were playing happily on the bed. They didn't feel the urgency of the battle at all. This made Yin Nuoxing's tense mind relax. Brother, seeing a figure on the balcony, Ming blinked her small eyes. When she saw who it was, she cried out in joy. She hurriedly jumped off the bed and pounced towards Yin Nuoxing. Reaching out, Yin Nuoxing caught the petite figure and patted her head with a smile. He walked into the room and patted the head of little Purple Soul, who was running towards him. Only then did he look at Yuyin and smiled. You're back. You went out to play for a day. Yuyin smiled sweetly and pulled him to sit down. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Suddenly, she realized that something was wrong. She suddenly came back to her senses and stood up. Glaring, she angrily said, F***CK? Why are you guys still so calm when there's so much fighting going on outside? Because you're here. Because brother is here, Yuyin and the two girls said at the same time. Yin Nuoxing was stunned and felt an inexplicable warmth in his heart. Looking at Ming, who was still acting coquettishly in his arms, Yin Nuoxing's anxiety finally disappeared. We also know that something has happened outside. However, Little Star hasn't returned. We won't go anywhere. Yuyin smiled and patted his head as she said gently. Yin Nuoxing lowered his eyelids and hugged the two girls. He gently nodded. After a while, he took a deep breath and looked at Ming and Purple Soul. He smiled and said, Yes, brother is back. Brother will protect you. Yes. Ming and Purple Soul giggled and leaned on his chest. After hugging the two girls for a while, Yin Nuoxing slowly placed them on the bed. He looked at Yuyin and said, I'll send you to the 9-Shrine Manor first. I'll think of a way to settle the matter in Yuyin City. After saying that, without waiting for their response, a blue light flickered on her face. She instantly changed into a delicate face and changed into a fiery red robe. Be careful. I heard that those people are very strong. If you can't handle it, don't force yourself. Surviving is the most important thing. Her jade-like hands gently tidied his robe and gently tied up his long hair. Only then did she nod in satisfaction. Don't worry, sister. Don't you trust my escaping skills? Yin Nuoxing curled his lips and smiled. Tisk, Yuyin rolled her eyes at him. A few minutes later, Yin Nuoxing carried the three girls and jumped out of the balcony. Her 6 wings opened in the wind and light elements appeared. She carried the 3 girls and rushed towards the manor in the east. When she was still a short distance away from the manor, she put down Yuyin and the other 2 girls. She sensed that there were familiar people in the manor and let out a sigh of relief. She then held Yin's hand and walked over quickly. Damn it, there's a great battle in the sky. We can only lie down here. Inside the manor, there was a scolding sound, followed by a few sighs at the same time. Divine King said, "You want to try to break the seal of Yuyin City." "Divine King, I can't help." Another intermittent voice came, causing the beautiful woman to bitterly smile. Just now, Jin Wang came back and pulled away the elder of the Water God Temple. He quickly explained the situation to her, but she didn't expect this girl to remember it. "Little Xia, just focus on recuperating. If you want to blame someone, blame your big brother. Look at how he drove without braking. Look at how we are now." Mu Ling rubbed her right arm that had lost all feeling and couldn't help but bitterly smile. "All right, you guys just lie down. No matter how the great battle in the sky is, it won't be your turn." The beautiful woman couldn't help but smile. She raised her head and saw the two girls quickly walking in. She couldn't help but be startled. Then she happily called out, "You Exine, where?" Almost at the same time that they heard the voice, the 9 people lying on the bed struggled to raise their heads. They saw Yu Xin, who was wearing a fiery red dress, walking in with Yu Yin and 2 other girls. Their eyes were filled with joy. "Little sister Yu Xin, Yu Xin," the 9 people excitedly called out. As for why they were so excited when they saw her, they didn't know. "You guys are." Yu Xin was stunned when she saw the 9 people lying on the bed, almost paralyzed. Waving her hand, the 9 people bitterly smiled, especially Yao Hua. He couldn't say that he had crashed into the wall at the speed of light. "Little sister Yu Xin, go help the Divine King." They said that they want to forcefully end this game and break the array that covers the entire Yuyin City. The elder of the Water God Temple has already followed them. However, the other experts in the city have gone to pin down the enemy. To break this array, we need a lot of people's help. Little sister Yu Xin, please help. Right now, the only one who can ask for help is you. Seeing the 9 people suddenly become very excited and talk a lot, Yu Xin understood. Then, she couldn't help but smile and said, "I didn't expect that Jin Wang would also have such thoughts. This is what I wanted to do. You guys can rest at ease and recover. Also, I'll leave my sister and the others to you. I'll be back soon." "We'll leave it to you." The 9 people excitedly roared. However, because of their internal injuries, they couldn't help but howl again. The beautiful woman bitterly smiled, stood up, patted Yu Xion's head, and said softly, "Child, be careful." Yu Xion nodded and placed Ming and Little Purple Soul on the bed. Then, she glanced at Yu Yin and said, "Then I'll go." After saying that, her body turned into a red light and rushed out of the room like lightning. She flew straight towards the North City. In the sky, she quickly changed her clothes and changed her face. Patting his black windbreaker, Yun Nuoxing took a deep breath and looked at the crazy circle in the north. There were constantly figures falling from the sky, and there were also people rushing up into the sky. The sound of explosions and shouts could be heard from afar. "I need to use Ling Hong's sword." Clenching her right hand, Yun Nuoxing murmured. It was because of this that she used her original identity and not Yu Xion's. In just a few minutes, he had neared the encirclement in the northern part of the city. His powerful soul power spread out like water waves. From his sleeves, a small section of the silver-blue long needle floated out. Borrowing the power of the Ling Hong sword, his soul power merged into the void. When he pulled out the Ling Hong sword, the first to react was the encirclement in the sky. What? This is... The power of space is out of control. The frenzied battle suddenly came to a halt. Both sides tacitly retreated abruptly, and the circle immediately quieted down. Luo Lin. The girl also stopped. Her fluttering sleeves gradually calmed down. The smile on her face suddenly disappeared, and she called out calmly, "I don't know either." This soft call made the man beside her who blocked the blood lotus shake his head. He had never seen such a strange situation. He did not know what method someone used to confine the power of space in this space. "Is that so?" The girl gently nodded her head. She slowly raised her right hand, and an energy barrier suddenly appeared in front of her. A terrifying energy light beam that contained blazing flames blasted onto the barrier with lightning speed. Many ripples appeared on the barrier, but remained firm and did not waver even after the flames dissipated. I say, don't you all learn from your mistakes? Looking at the young expert from the Serene Flame Pavilion who was panting heavily in the distance, as well as the many experts behind him with weapons in their hands, a chill surged in his voice. You should have more or less understood what a meaningless attack is, right? With a wave of her slender sleeve, a huge black energy light beam pierced through the space like lightning and violently shot toward the young man and the others. Facing the girl's sudden attack, the young man took a deep breath. A lotus flower appeared on his chest. He stretched out his right hand, and an energy barrier quickly spread out. The experts beside him also stretched out their hands. Majestic energy gathered together and condensed on the energy barrier. A faint brilliance flowed, making it look indestructible. Boom! Crack! As soon as the energy barrier was formed, the black energy light beam suddenly blasted on the barrier with great force. Ripples quickly appeared on the surface of the barrier. Then a crisp sound rang out. The terrifying energy directly tore the barrier apart and blasted on the young man and the experts. The energy swept over with the force of a thunderbolt. The people did not have time to dodge and were hit hard. They immediately spat out mouthfuls of blood. Their bodies flew back like cannonballs. They directly fell from the sky and heavily smashed into the Serene Flame City, creating a huge pit in the ground. If this passionate song can only reach such a stage, it is time for the curtain call. The girl's indifferent voice caused the hearts of the surrounding people to tremble. Soon after, they saw her slowly raise her right hand. A pitch-black energy light beam suddenly shot into the sky and merged into the energy barrier. Dark erosion, activate. An indifferent voice slowly sounded. Then, everyone saw that the originally silent magical formation under the ground actually lit up with a pitch-black light and slowly rotated. As the magical formation rotated, a destructive energy suddenly spread throughout the entire city. Yin Nuoxing, who was madly rushing, suddenly stopped when she saw this scene. She turned her head and looked at the pitch-black light beam that reached the sky and the formation that was quietly rotating underground. She could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Damn it, it's about to activate. After taking a deep breath, Yin Nuoxing cast aside the distracting thoughts in her mind. The 6 wings on her back shot out, and she madly flew towards Jin Wang and the others. Even her body turned into a ray of golden light. In the distance, Jin Wang and the others looked at the huge formation that was slowly rotating. The ground rumbled, and their faces turned abnormally ugly. The elder of the Water Divine Hall, beside them, also turned pale. Is this the end? The Thunder Divine King bitterly smiled. He had not even started to struggle, and it was already over. Beside him, Xueqing and Murong Xueji's faces were also solemn. Was it really over? They were really unwilling. Divine King. Just when everyone was feeling disappointed, a loud shout in the distance caused everyone to quickly raise their heads. Soon after, they saw a pitch-black figure frantically flapping her 6 wings. Surging wind elements swept out like a storm. Yin Nuoxing, why are you back? Seeing the person who had come, Jin Wang and the others were stunned. However, before they could ask, they saw the figure suddenly land in front of them. Dozens of golden chains shot out from her sleeves and tied them up. Her 6 wings suddenly flapped and brought them away. Her speed was so fast that they could not react. I can break this formation. The sudden shout made everyone's heart tremble. Seeing Yin Nuoxing's anxious and serious expression, they knew that she was not joking. They were all stunned. Chapter 124. Yin Nuoxing's 6 black wings flapped crazily as she pulled a few people along. Her figure was like a hummingbird in the dark night. She sped through the sky like lightning, leaving behind afterimages in the air. You can break it? Seeing his anxious appearance, Jin Wang's figure flashed and appeared in front of him. He stretched out his hand and pulled Yin Nuoxing. He pulled the chain and brought everyone along with him. His speed was countless times faster than before, and he even took the time to ask a question. In. Yin Nuashing nodded heavily and shouted, I need all of your help. South of Yuyin City, the center of the four main paths that lead to the Yuyin Pavilion. Quick! All right. Jin Jinwang roared, and the energy in his body suddenly boiled. Thunder God King broke free from a chain and pulled it with his hand. Terrifying lightning surrounded his body. In terms of speed, other than the light element, the lightning element was the fastest. He pulled the chain with one hand and pulled everyone along. He turned into a thick bolt of lightning and crazily charged through the sky. Wherever he passed, the sound of thunder would resound endlessly. In the distance, the girl seemed to have sensed something. She turned her gaze and saw the bolt of lightning hurriedly passing through space and flying towards the south. She couldn't help but frown. However, after a while, she relaxed. The light pillar on her right hand became even more resplendent, and a black halo suddenly exploded from it. It flew across the entire Yuyin city at the speed of light. A delicate shout suddenly rang out. Darkness corrosion, spatial devour. As the shout rang out, a 3-meter-long black pillar of light suddenly shot out from the huge dark formation underground. It pierced into the sky and connected to the huge energy barrier in the sky. As the pillar of light appeared, the formation seemed to have a chain reaction. Several hundred pillars of light shot into the sky and connected to the energy barrier in the end. Wong. When all the pillars of light stabbed into the energy barrier, black formations that were 30 meters long appeared on all the pillars of light. There were several dozen formations on each pillar of light. As they slowly revolved, they created a terrifying ripple of space, causing the surrounding space to distort. When the space was distorted to a certain extent, faint spatial folds appeared. Following a terrifying explosion, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the sky. It was like a huge mouth that was about to devour people. It spat out terrifying spatial energy and formed a terrifying spatial storm. What appeared in front of everyone was a storm formed by silver-blue spatial energy. It was 100 feet in size. The turbulent suction force from the silver-blue storm caused everyone in the sky to be like a small boat in the sea. Their bodies constantly swayed, and even the surrounding space was constantly trembling. Some people were even drawn into the spatial storm or spatial cracks if they weren't careful. Those who had not reached the divine emperor realm were drawn into the spatial storm. They didn't even have time to scream before they were killed. The turbulent spatial energy will engulf the entire Yuyin city in half an hour. At that time, the spatial cracks will devour this city. At that time, it will be the time of your death. The girl looked at the spatial cracks in front of her and said indifferently. The young man's body trembled. He turned his head and stared at her angrily. The lotus in front of him also trembled violently with the change in his state of mind. Kill! The soaring, murderous aura made everyone's heartstrings tremble. Shortly after, they roared angrily. They grabbed their weapons and rushed towards the 5 people in the most aggressive way. Streaks of energy covered the sky and covered the earth as they rushed towards the 5 people. Stubborn, resisting stubbornly. The girl smiled faintly as a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from her body. Black energy surged on the surface of her body, causing everyone to hold their breaths. That terrifying, oppressive feeling made them unable to even think of resisting. All right, let's continue the game. Before the time limit is up, I will play with you guys. In the sky to the south of Yuyin City, Yin Nuashing and the others could not help but lower their bodies when they felt the aura of a ruler descending upon the world. Even though they were far away, that pressure made them feel extremely uncomfortable. This is the closing point of the formation, the empty space of the chaotic energy. Looking at the empty street below, Yin Nuashing took a deep breath with difficulty. When he came out of the gathering fate pavilion, he kept his evil spirit eye open. It was not easy for him to see through the forbidden formation and find the weak point of this empty space. However, it was very difficult to break it. I will try my best to break it with my evil spirit eye. In the meantime, I need someone to protect my eyes and help me maintain the output of energy. Yin Nuashing nodded and said to everyone in a deep voice, "Let me do it." Hearing that, Jin Wang suddenly took a step forward and placed his hand on Yin Nuashing's shoulder. Gold elements continuously surged out of his body and entered Yin Nuashing's body. Gold elements were originally good at defense. Moreover, it also had another function, transfer of damage. Also, Senior Thunder God King, I need you to be prepared. When I break the formation and expose the weak point, I need you to attack with all your strength and shatter that weak point. Yin Nuashing said to Thunder God King. All right. Thunder God King heavily nodded. He suddenly waved his hand, and a huge spear appeared in his hand. He fiercely stomped on the void, and a crack appeared. One could see how heavy it was. In the end, Yin Nuashing said to the Elder of the Water Spirit Hall, Elder, I need you to analyze this formation with me. How do we do it together? Hearing that, the Water God Temple Elder awkwardly scratched his head. He had never tried to break down a formation with someone else. It was very difficult for the two of them to synchronize their progress. Yin Nuashing shook his head. His left hand was placed on the Elder's right, while his right hand covered his left eye. The evil spirit eye suddenly opened. At the same time, a strange energy flowed along his arm and entered the Elder's right eye. At this moment, his left eye instantly became gorgeous. This, following the opening of the evil spirit eye, his vision slightly shook. The world that he saw was something that he had never seen before. Red fire elements, blue water elements, and below him, the buildings were all brown and light green. Below the ground, a gigantic array formation was rumbling as it rotated. Elder, I'm going to start, Yin Nuashing shouted. He released his right hand and closed his left eye. Then, he looked at the empty space of the formation. Formations appeared around the evil spirit eye. The Elder immediately focused and looked at the formation of the evil spirit eye. He could see that there were many subtle energy matrices hidden under the formation. Layer by layer, they covered the empty space like a protective layer. He grabbed at the void with his hand, and the array that appeared in front of him slowly descended. Then it expanded slightly until it was as big as the hole that was 1,000 feet in size. Only then did it completely cover the hole. During this time, Yin Nuashing and the Elder kept looking down. However, their gazes followed the descending array and directly saw the energy matrix lines inside, as well as the runes. Analysis begin. Looking at the magic formation that covered the entirety of Yuyan City, streams of information flowed through the magic formation and were imprinted in Zhao Fu's mind. Once we start to break the formation, the people from the Abyss Shrine will know. There is only one chance. At that time, Senior Fire God King, I'll leave it to you, Yin Nuashing said softly to the Fire God King. Hearing this, the Fire God King smiled bitterly. Was she asking him to stop the Nether King or the Emperor of the Underworld alone? Leave it to me. However, he couldn't say any discouraging words at this time. He gritted his teeth and nodded. Taking a deep breath, Yin Nuashing mobilized all of his energy and sent it into the evil spirit eye. At the same time, the other arrays also flew towards the first array and overlapped with each other. A terrifying penetrating force was born from the arrays. Looking at the empty interior of the array, the two of them felt dizzy for a moment. The huge amount of information directly crashed into their minds and almost caused them to faint. Fortunately, there were two of them together, otherwise, Yin Nuashing would definitely have fainted. Just as he increased the output of his Yuan Qi, Jin Wang felt a stinging pain coming back. He was stunned and quickly looked at Yin Nuashing. He saw that his eyes were opened so wide that they looked like they were going to tear apart. The small formation floating in front of him was spinning crazily. All he could see was a thin piece of blue round cake. He couldn't even see what it looked like. Senior Jin Wang, I'm going to overload. Get ready. At this time, Yin Nuashing shouted softly. Jin Wang immediately focused. Then, he felt a stinging pain coming back from the metal element. It made his eyes hurt. Normally, if Yin Nuashing did this, he would have fainted from the pain. Only people at Jin Wang's level could withstand it and allow him to operate at full power without any worries. While they were analyzing, the space of the entire Yuyan city started to collapse. The space could no longer withstand the pressure. Thick cracks covered the entire sky like cracks on porcelain. When it couldn't withstand the pressure, the entire city would be destroyed in an instant. Their eyes stared unblinkingly at the interior of the formation. After thousands of calculations, Yin Nuoxing and the elder nodded at the same time. They took a deep breath and directed the formation of the evil spirit eye. Dozens of thin rays of light shot out and carefully penetrated the formation. Wang. Just as the rays of light penetrated the formation, Jin Wang and the others saw that the originally empty space suddenly lit up with a blue light. Then they saw thousands of energy matrices entangled there, protecting the only point of convergence. The thin rays of light carefully penetrated the formation and arranged the matrices in a certain order. Layer by layer, they peeled them off. Only by using the evil spirit eye could they know which matrices could be touched and which matrices could not be touched. It was like dismantling a bomb. In the north, the heart of the girl who was in the middle of a fierce battle suddenly trembled. Her delicate body froze, and this momentary pause made the youth happy. He held the small lotus in his hand and turned into a bolt of lightning as he charged towards the girl. Then he grabbed the small blood lotus in his hand and viciously slapped it towards the girl. Her mind trembled, but she came back to her senses in an instant. She saw the young man rushing over with a ferocious look on his face. Her willowy eyebrows wrinkled, and she suddenly stretched out her right hand. She waved her wide sleeve, and an energy light beam shot out at lightning speed towards the young man. This ferocious momentum caught even the young man off guard. Such a frightening energy was formed in an instant. At this moment, it was pointless to think too much. The only time he had was to use the blood lotus flower in his hand to block the light pillar. Crack! The energy light pillar was mixed with a vast amount of energy as it viciously collided with the blood lotus, causing the latter to violently tremble. Then boom! Under countless horrified gazes, a huge firestorm erupted and swept across the heavens and earth. As the storm swept across, the surrounding spatial storm was finally unable to endure it. With a bang, it exploded apart. At this moment, the broken space became even more broken. As the firestorm swept across, the two people behind the girl were stunned when they saw this storm that had suddenly erupted. They were unable to dodge in time and were ruthlessly struck. Immediately, a mouthful of fresh blood was spat out. Their bodies were like kites with their strings cut as they flew backwards, violently colliding into the empty space. Countless gazes looked at the two people who had fallen, after which their gazes turned towards the firestorm in the sky. A joy involuntarily spread in their hearts. Bang! A low and deep sound of flesh colliding rang out within the firestorm, causing everyone to turn their gazes over. Immediately, they saw a figure suddenly flying out from within the firestorm. As he flew, his body curled up. A moment later, he abruptly spread out his four limbs. His wide sleeves brought along a gust of wind, causing his body to come to a stop. Their gazes suddenly turned and saw that the figure that flew backwards was the girl. At this moment, the clothes on her body were actually a little tattered. That explosion had actually caused her to be a little injured, detonating a high-grade divine artifact. Good, very good. The blood in her body churned, causing the girl's eyebrows to slightly furrow. There was some anger in her muttering voice. It seems that this attack had not only injured her, it had also angered her. Yao, Kuan, Huang, Luo Lin, I'm not playing anymore. Someone is breaking the array. Kill them all. The girl furiously shouted. Her sharp gaze looked toward the south. Like a current of air, a black aura slowly flowed out. A terrifying pressure descended from the sky, causing everyone who was fighting to turn sluggish. Chi! Suddenly, a figure shot out from within the firestorm. His clothes were tattered, and his hair was curled up from the heat. His body was covered in blood, and he was holding a blue lotus in his hand. It was the youth from the Serene Flame Pavilion. When he heard her words, his expression involuntarily changed. He looked towards the south and suddenly laughed sinisterly. He loudly shouted, "Someone is breaking the array. Leave them here. Once the array that encompasses Serene Flame City is broken, this damn game will automatically end. Kill." When they heard the voice, everyone was stunned. Then, a fierce, murderous aura swept out in all directions. In an instant, the temperature of the world dropped significantly. "You're courting death." When she heard the youth shout, the girl's expression suddenly changed. Her cold eyes stared fiercely at him. Instantly, he felt the aura of death. It was as if the Grim Reaper had already waved his sickle at him. He hurriedly took a step back and looked around. When he saw the surging battle intent in everyone's eyes, he smiled coldly. "Do you really think that you're our match?" The dark and cold smile on his face had just appeared, but before it could fully unfurl, it suddenly froze. This was because he saw a wide sleeve swiftly appear in front of him in a ghost-like manner. The girl's tender and perfect, ice-cold, pretty face was also swiftly magnified in his eyes. The moment the girl's figure appeared, the eyes of the youth from the Serene Flame Pavilion shrunk. He felt that the girl's attack had completely sealed off the surrounding space. He suddenly gritted his teeth, and a ruthless look flashed across his eyes. He grabbed the ice-blue lotus in his hand and directly raised his palm. He actually used his chest to press against the girl's palm. The little hand that was wrapped in the sleeve fiercely pressed against the youth's chest. The vast, icy power was like a volcano that suddenly erupted. After receiving such a fatal attack, the young man's face instantly turned deathly pale. A mouthful of blood fog was spat out, and the crisp sound of bones breaking was even emitted from his chest. His body was also shaken by that frightening force until his meridians were broken. "You want me to die? You will also be buried with me." Madness surged in the young man's eyes. He raised the ice-blue lotus in his hand and let out a shriek. Then, he ruthlessly slammed it into the girl's body. The latter's beautiful eyes immediately widened. Shock surged into her eyes. Chapter 125. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion instantly erupted when the ice-blue lotus slammed into the girl's body. The destructive and violent force was forcefully pushed into the girl's body by the terrifying force contained in the young man's palm. Immediately, the girl's petite body seemed to have swallowed countless thunderbolts as it constantly erupted with rumbling sounds. Boom! A gigantic firestorm soared into the sky. At this moment, a destructive power swept out from the sky like a storm. The entire Yuyin city trembled like an earthquake. Gigantic cracks spread out in all directions with the northern part of the city as the epicenter. The gigantic formation also started to sway slightly under the trembling. The experts from both sides were so shocked that they covered their heads and fled like rats. The annihilation storm that had suddenly arrived also attracted the attention of the two battlegrounds that were still engaged in an intense battle. Shock surged into their eyes when they glanced over, after which they no longer bothered about pestering their opponents as they hurriedly pulled back, afraid that they would be implicated by the annihilation force. Boom! A huge energy storm that was tens of thousands of feet in size instantly erupted like a tornado that stirred up the heavens and the earth. From afar, the storm seemed to have pierced through the void. Like a miracle, the raging energy storm and destructive ripples spread out like ripples. The buildings in the northern part of Yuyin City finally collapsed completely at this moment. Fortunately, no one stayed there, or else they would have been killed in an instant. The destructive ripples spread all the way to the center of the city. All the buildings within tens of thousands of miles were overturned, and even a layer of the ground was scraped up. My lord! The other four experts from the Abyss Shrine were much paler at this moment. They had never thought that someone would have such a powerful divine artifact that could even threaten their lord in the distant sky. The experts from both sides looked at the small half of Yuyin City that had been turned into ruins in an instant. For a moment, horror surged in their eyes. Then, they took a deep breath. That young man was crazy. This divine artifact that was close to the pinnacle exploded just like that. That's not right. How could the Yuyan Pavilion have such a powerful lotus divine artifact? This lotus should be the unique, refining model of the Soul Lotus sect in the Divine Prefecture. This shouldn't be the case. Could it be that the Serene Flame Pavilion has some relationship with the Soul Lotus sect? To refine such a divine artifact, they need the power of 4 elements, and the fire element is the mediator. The stronger the flame, the stronger the Soul Lotus. Is that Emperor of the Underworld dead? Looking at the huge mushroom cloud rising in the sky, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. At the same time, they were somewhat at a loss. Chi, a sharp, rushing wind sound once again resounded over the sky, while everyone was feeling bewildered in their hearts. Immediately, the firestorm that permeated the sky suddenly wiggled. Soon after, a black figure rushed out from within it. For strands of long black hair were scattered. They were extremely dazzling when mixed with the wine-red hair. Not dead. Looking at the head of wine-red hair, the experts who had just relaxed suddenly held their breaths and hurriedly tightened their grip on their weapons. However, just as they thought that the girl was going to slaughter them, they were surprised to see that she did not even look at them. Her figure trembled and flew towards the south. Not good. Someone's trying to break the formation over there. Stop her. At this moment, someone finally came to his senses and hurriedly shouted. Immediately, more than 10 figures rushed out directly. Protect the Lord. However, before they could fly far, they saw 4 figures floating in front of them. Their auras burst out, and they were like 4 impenetrable walls. 8 pairs of eyes stared at the experts, causing them to tremble. After all, these were 4 Netherworld King Realm experts. If it wasn't for the young man's unexpected move, they wouldn't have been able to injure the 5 people in front of them at all. Kill, kill. However, this hesitation only lasted for a moment. Almost every god had some divine artifacts of high or low level. Even if their levels were not high enough, with the help of the divine artifacts, they could still fight against the Emperor of the Underworld. The 4 of them did not panic, for weapons shot out from their hands and grabbed onto them, forcefully blocking the attacks of the dozens of people. In the south, where Yun Nuoxing and the rest were, the former and the elder of the water god temple's hands were moving rapidly. The former even had a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Jin Wang was also frowning. There was a piercing pain in his eyes, making him feel very uncomfortable. Soon, looking at the rapidly retreating energy array formation, Yun Nuoxing's heart was filled with joy. Suddenly, with a thought, the array formation of the Evil Spirit Eyes Analysis Array had even more light rays surging into the black array formation. Like pulling out silk from a cocoon, all the driving arrays were pulled apart. Kaboom! Just as they were anxiously trying to break the array formation, even the space above their heads showed signs of shattering. Even the buildings below had many void cracks suddenly opening up, swallowing the buildings in one gulp. In Yuyan City, countless people were evacuated by the Fire God King and the rest to the east where the space was still stable. Over there, the beautiful woman was trying her best to stabilize the space. Young Master Yun, the space here can't hold on much longer. Looking at the constantly crumbling space in the sky, Xueqing was also a little nervous. The power of space permeating the air made the surrounding space very unstable. A crack could appear at any time. It could even kill a divine emperor expert. They were only mortal realm and half-immortal experts. If they were to encounter it, they would definitely die. Don't rush me. Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly. It was useless to rush him. He was already at his fastest speed. The Evil Spirit Eye's first realm's full power was already displayed. Even if he overloaded the second realm, he still cannot break it. Kaboom! A sudden explosion came from the horizon, causing his mind to tremble. However, he did not have the time to care about what or who was coming. He could only focus on breaking the array formation. Boom! A black aura rushed towards them like a tide, causing everyone to frown. Jin Wang raised his head and looked towards the direction of the aura. His golden pupils could not help but shrink to the size of a pinhole. A petite figure was standing in the sky, less than 1,000 feet away from them. Her wine-red hair and ink-black long hair contrasted with each other, appearing exceptionally beautiful. Her clothes were somewhat tattered and charred. Her snow-white skin, which was covered with crisscrossing wounds. When one's gaze shifted upwards, one could see that the tender and perfect pretty face was filled with fury and iciness. There was even an eye-catching trace of fresh blood at the corner of her mouth. Oh my God! Seeing that the person in question had come to him, Jin Wang could not help but smile bitterly. What should he do now? Fire God King was also shocked. He quickly stood up and clenched his fist. A fiery red cauldron appeared above his palm. He looked at the girl solemnly. She seemed very young, but he knew that she was a peak underworld emperor expert, close to the emperor god level. Even if she was injured, she was not someone they could fight against in their current state. Mei Mao quickly glanced at Fire God King, Thunder God King, and the others. Finally, she stopped at Yin Nuoxing. Looking at the array that was spinning crazily in front of him and the empty spot on the ground, Mei Mao was astonished and furious. Just a mere mortal-level ant. How dare you break the most sacred array of my temple? The girl gritted her teeth. Her delicate body trembled slightly because of her anger. Yin Nuoxing, who felt her gaze, trembled. Immediately, his hands formed a seal with lightning speed. A small array was formed in his hands, and he slapped it into the eyes of the water god temple elder. Elder, I'll leave the rest to you. I'll lend you my other eye. It can break the array at full speed. Murmuring to the water god temple elder, Yin Nuoxing closed his beautiful right eye. His pitch-black left eye slowly opened. Looking at the petite girl in the sky, he was stunned for a moment. But after a moment, he regained his composure and snorted softly. Who said that a mortal ant can't break a formation? Didn't you see that your so-called sacred formation is about to be broken by me in a while? If I'm an ant, then what's the point of your noble temple's formation? Yin Nuoxing crossed his arms and emphasized every word ant and break, which made Jin Wang and the others roll their eyes. Looking at Yin Nuoxing's confident look, Jin Wang couldn't stay calm and hurriedly asked, "Is it okay for you to break free like this?" "Don't worry, it's the same. It's just that the speed will be a little slower. However, we will be able to break it before the formation is fully activated. Senior Thunder God King, we will be able to make our move in about 5 minutes." Yin Nuoxing walked to the side and shook his head as he transmitted his voice to everyone. 5 minutes. Hearing the time limit, everyone couldn't stay calm. That peak-level underworld emperor expert was already here. She could kill them in 1 second. How could they pass the 5 minutes? Ha! Hee. There's indeed no rule. But I don't think you can continue to break it. The girl sneered. Her figure trembled, and she suddenly rushed toward Yin Nuoxing. The vast energy was like a black wave that completely sealed the surrounding space. Even Jin Wang was shocked. He couldn't move his body. Ha! Yin Nuoxing laughed faintly. Ling Hongjian trembled in his sleeves, and the sealed space collapsed with a loud bang. 6 wings shot out from his back, bringing along a majestic wind element, and fiercely trembled backwards. Following that, the vast wave slammed into the ground, directly blasting out a huge hole in the space, causing him to wipe his forehead. What kind of monster was this? Before he could heave a sigh of relief, the space in front of him suddenly trembled. A figure appeared like lightning, and the wide sleeves came toward his face. At this moment, the aura of death surged in his heart. Die. Die my ass. A delicate shout suddenly sounded, and at the same time, 3 other violent shouts were heard. Then, 3 figures suddenly appeared in front of the girl's sleeves. 3 huge waves of energy blended together, and like a sky curtain, they smashed toward the ladder. Bang! The moment the 4 waves of energy exploded, the energy scattered. 3 big hands grabbed Yin Nuoxing's shoulders, and she retreated at lightning speed. Stay. However, before they could retreat, a sleeve suddenly pierced through the sky curtain and reached out at lightning speed. At the same time, an aura suddenly erupted and blasted toward Jin Wang and the other 2. "You can't keep me here," Yin Nuoxing shouted. The golden chains in front of her quickly twisted into a golden barrier and met the small hands wrapped in her sleeves. A dull sound of collision was heard, and the four of them groaned at the same time. Although they blocked the attack with the golden chains, the force actually penetrated the chains and blasted their bodies. Retreat, Jin Wang groaned. The three of them grabbed Yun Nuoxing's shoulders and hurriedly retreated at a faster speed. The three figures sped up, and only then did they bring Yun Nuoxing forward for a distance. When they looked back, they saw Yun Nuoxing's handsome face as pale as paper. Behind them, the girl was actually locked in place by dozens and hundreds of intertwined chains. For a moment, she was trapped on the spot. Enough! The girl suddenly let out an angry roar, and a chaotic aura suddenly erupted, shattering the thousands of chains. A purplish-black energy appeared on her body, and that aura instantly became surging and vigorous in just a few breaths of time. I'll finish you all off in one go. With a delicate shout, the girl slowly raised her hands above her head. Soon after, the hundreds and thousands of light pillars formed by the power of space in Yuan City seemed to have received an order. They suddenly changed directions and gathered together. The rich power of space gathered 100 feet above her palms. Since I can't let the array destroy you, I'll do it myself. The frantically gathering power of space formed a huge spatial whirlpool, sucking in all the power of space in Yuan City. That spatial whirlpool expanded to a size of 100,000 feet. In the center, a silver-blue energy ball was spinning. It was like a silver-blue sun, illuminating the entire Yuan City. Every time it spun, the surrounding space would collapse. F***, we've gone too far. If that thing comes crashing down, Yuan City will be destroyed. Seeing the space around the violent spatial whirlpool constantly collapsing and repairing itself, Jin Wang and the other two were sweating profusely. F***, if that thing came crashing down, even a god emperor would die, let alone the emperor of the underworld. It's just the power of space. Just as everyone was shocked, Yun Nuoxing, who was being held by Jin Wang and the other two, laughed sinisterly and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The three of them were stunned and confused. However, after a while, their faces suddenly turned pale. Watch me, Yun Nuoxing laughed loudly. He broke free from the three and spread his 6 wings. Wind elements gathered, and like a bolt of black lightning, he charged towards the chaotic spatial whirlpool in the sky. Yun Nuoxing, young Master Yun Nuoxing, seeing him charge towards a spatial whirlpool like an arrow, Jin Wang, Xue Qing, and the others were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They did not understand why this seemingly calm and crazy young man would do something so suicidal. You're seeking your own death. Seeing this, the girl was also stunned. Then, she laughed coldly. From her point of view, Yun Nuoxing would definitely die if he charged into the spatial whirlpool. Even a god emperor would die if he entered the extremely condensed power of space. This sentence, unexpectedly, Yun Nuoxing laughed out loud towards the sky. He waved his right hand in front of him, and a 2-meter-long silver-blue needle quickly condensed into form. The moment this needle appeared, Gold God King and the others also had a look of shock on their faces. I'll return it to you as it is. Yun Nuoxing laughed loudly. He raised his Linghong sword, and his body was completely covered by a layer of silver-blue barrier. Then, he charged straight into the spatial whirlpool. He lost contact with the power of space. The girl watched in shock as he charged into the spatial whirlpool. Her pupils shrank to the size of a needle. Linghong sword, ranked second in the divine sword record. So this young man took it. Jin Wang and the others gasped. So he had the Linghong sword. No wonder he was so fearless. Endless devour. Loud laughter was emitted from within the spatial storm. Soon after, the crowd saw the 100,000 feet large spatial vortex suddenly tremble, after which it slowly shrank. Even its aura gradually weakened. In a few breaths' time, it had shrunk to the point where it could no longer be seen. When the space storm shrunk to a size of less than 100 feet, Everyone saw Yun Nuoxing raise the Ling Hong sword that was shining with a silver light. The surrounding space vortex and the silver-blue energy ball were all crazily absorbed by it, until they disappeared. Buzz. When the last wisp of power of space surged into the Ling Hong sword, the surrounding space stabilized. Looking at the long needle in his hand that was as dazzling as the sun god sword, Yun Nuoxing grinned. He looked down at the girl whose mouth was wide open in fear. Then he waved his hand violently. Ling Hong sword, sky-shaking roar. Chapter 126. The resplendent silver light was like the divine light of destruction. The entire Yuyin city could see the silver light piercing through the sky and illuminating all the dumbfounded faces. Even time seemed to have stopped at this moment. Kacha! There was the sound of space collapsing, as if it could not withstand the pressure. It shattered like a thin piece of paper. There was even a 1,000-meter-wide crack in space. Destructive spatial force surged out from it, causing the space that was on the verge of collapse to become even more shattered. Chi! The silver sword light traveled faster than the speed of light and viciously cut into the girl's body. With it, a thumb-wide wound appeared from her left shoulder all the way to her right waist. The wound was as smooth as a mirror, and blood gushed out like a fountain. Her delicate body was also struck by this destructive force and was knocked into the sky. She crashed into Yuyin City along with the sword light, causing the ground to collapse by several meters. Boom! Ling Hongjian's sword light brought with it unstoppable spatial force as it viciously struck the ground. Immediately, a thunderous boom resounded through the world. An incomparably wide crack appeared in Yuyin City. The buildings that were enveloped by the sword light did not even have ashes remaining. When the sword light struck the energy barrier, it also caused a crack to appear. The moonlight rushed into Yuyin City through the crack, causing everyone who saw it to rejoice. They all hurriedly flew towards the crack. However, the crack in the energy barrier did not last for long. It was quickly filled up by the replenishment of energy. Those who were slightly delighted were instantly dumbfounded. Then they stomped their feet in anger and could not help but curse. In the sky, Yun Nuoxing grabbed Ling Hongjian and panted a few times. She swallowed her saliva and lowered her head to look at Ling Hongjian. She secretly thanked her lucky stars. If the girl did not condense such a huge spatial storm and Ling Hongjian's ability to devour the power of space, he probably would not have been able to harm her. In his normal state, Ling Hongjian could only cause devastating damage to divine kings. As for the emperor of the underworld, his cultivation was too high. He was only lucky this time. Even so, Ling Hongjian's energy had not been used up. The remaining energy was enough for him to tear down Yuyin City with 2 more slashes. Are you all right? Jin Jinwang and the other 2 hurriedly came to his side. Seeing that he was panting slightly, but his breathing was still stable, they asked. Their eyes were filled with amazement and envy as they looked at the long silver needle. Then they looked at the ground, where the smoke and dust had filled the air. They frowned and muttered, "Although this sword strike is terrifying, your cultivation is too low. I don't think you can completely kill her. If necessary, I think you'll have to add another stab." Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing wiped his sweat and nodded in agreement. After all, his opponent was an expert at the peak of the Emperor of the Underworld. He was only 1 step away from reaching the divine Emperor realm. He was just a mortal-level cultivator. Although the divine weapon was good, in his hands, he could not even use 1/10,000th of its power. But it was still terrifying enough. The thunderous roar reverberated across the land for a while, before it gradually faded away. Jin Jinwang gently waved his sleeve, covering the dust that filled the sky. Soon after, everyone saw the terrifying crack that had split the entire Yuyin City into 2. This, within the Yuyin City, the sound of people sucking in cold breaths could be heard. That terrifying crack was at least 300 meters wide, spanning across the entire Yuyin City, splitting it into 2. Looking straight down, they could not see how deep the crack was. They only felt that it seemed to lead to the underworld. It was frightening and shocking. Beside the huge crack, a huge pit that was 3,000 meters wide slowly appeared. The bottom of the huge pit was at least 10 meters deep. Cracks spread out like spider webs, spreading to the side of the huge crack. Many rocks could be seen rolling down into the abyss. Cough! At the center of the crack, a petite figure appeared. That girl was currently using her wide right sleeve to cover the wound that covered half of her body. Fresh blood had soaked the surrounding ground. Her cherry lips were constantly panting. Her bright eyes were abnormally dim, unable to focus. When everyone looked over, they could even see that she was coughing out a mouthful of blood. Seeing that the powerful underworld emperor expert had fallen into such a state, everyone sucked in a cold breath again. This time, their voices were louder. The battle in the north had stopped the moment the silver light appeared. Numerous terrified gazes looked towards the south. Those who were closer could not help but swallow their saliva. Soon after, their terrified gazes looked towards the silver-blue small sword. Greed and fear appeared in their eyes. Boom! At this moment, a violent explosion suddenly sounded. Everyone quickly turned their gazes. They saw that the Thunder God King had ruthlessly stabbed the heavy spear in his hand into the closing point of the formation. A shocking bolt of lightning descended from the sky and struck his body. Then, through the spear, a destructive force was transmitted into the formation. At that moment, it was as if the Thunder God had descended. Kacha! A clear shattering sound reverberated throughout the entire Yuyan city. Soon after, everyone hurriedly raised their heads, only to see a fragment of the energy barrier suddenly falling from the sky. The instant the fragment appeared, the entire array also collapsed with a loud rumble. Spiderweb-like cracks rapidly spread across the black sky. With a loud bang, the array shattered, and icy blue moonlight shone down, causing everyone to feel gratified. Only after losing, it would one know how much one missed such an ordinary object. During the period when the entire city was sealed, everyone's minds were extremely tense. A loud laughter came from nowhere. It was an unbridled laughter that ignited the gunpowder keg of the entire city. The laughter covered the entire Yuyan city. The sky in the east slightly brightened up. Hearing the unbridled laughter coming from the city, Yun Nuoshing shook his head. It was not over yet. Taking a deep breath, he calmly looked at the abnormally weak little person below and sighed. The winner takes all. If they lost, the prize would be the lives of everyone in Yuyan City. At that time, they would not sympathize with them. He also knew that. However, he could not help but sigh. Slowly retracting his 6 wings, Yun Nuoshing's body trembled and landed in the huge pit. He landed in front of the little girl. His right hand held onto the Linghong sword. He twisted his wrist and pointed it at the little girl. The slight buzzing sound made the little girl's breathing quicken. Master! At this moment, when Luo Lin and the other 3 saw Yun Nuoshing pointing the dangerous weapon at the girl, they all rushed over as if they had gone mad. In a few breaths' time, they had rushed to the edge of the huge pit. Scram! Yun Nuoshing frowned. He held the Linghong sword tightly and waved it at the 4 of them. A dazzling silver light once again shone on everyone's faces. Boom! Within a radius of 10,000 miles, a flat space suddenly collapsed. At the edge of the abyss, rocks rolled down neatly and were neatly cut off. The 4 of them did not even have time to react. They could only see the silver light ruthlessly hitting their bodies. Poochie! Their bodies flew back as if they had been hit by a heavy blow. The 4 of them spat out a mouthful of blood and directly crashed into the buildings of Yuyan City. A large part of the buildings were smashed into pieces. They even rolled a few hundred times on the ground and slid a few thousand meters before coming to a stop. However, just as everyone thought that they would not be able to get up, Luo Lin and the other 3 madly roared in unison. They moved and rushed to the edge of the huge pit once again. Their eyes were blood red. They did not care about the huge sword wound on their bodies. For pairs of blood-red eyes stared fiercely at Yun Nuoshing and roared. Let go of our master! Yun Nuoshing raised his eyebrows. The arm that was holding the Linghong sword trembled a little. However, his expression did not change. He slowly placed the Linghong sword in front of him and circled it behind him. Just as he was about to use all his strength to attack, and even mouthed the word empty, he felt a light tug at the bottom of his pants. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He could not help but lower his head. He saw the little girl holding onto his pants tightly. Her unfocused eyes were staring at him. Her small mouth was moving slightly, as if she was saying something. This made him stunned again. He slowly spread out his soul power. At this moment, he finally understood what she was saying. Let them go. Hearing this pleading voice, Yin Nuoxing was stunned. His body trembled, and there was a hint of struggle in his eyes. However, the little girl who was on the verge of death used more strength to tug at his pants, causing him to almost fall down. He frowned and looked at the pair of eyes that were about to close. He shook his head and raised the Linghong sword again. "I beg you, let them go." After hearing this voice, Yin Nuoxing could no longer remain calm. His heartstrings seemed to have been plucked. The hand that was holding the Linghong sword trembled again. The crowd in the sky also looked at him nervously. Now, he controlled the life and death of Luo Lin and the other three. With a single thought, he could make the four of them stay in Yuyin City forever. Jin Wang and the others clenched their fists tightly. When they saw Yin Nuoxing's arm freeze, they almost could not help but want to stomp their feet. At this moment, as long as the sword went down, the sword that surpassed the speed of light, the four severely injured experts of the Abyss Shrine would be left here. If they were let go, there would be endless trouble in the future. TSK, TSK, TSK. The entire place was silent. The eyes of the Gold Divine King and the rest from Yuyin City were wide open at this moment. Their breathing gradually became ragged, and their faces were flushed red because of the fear in their hearts. The veins on their arms were also pulsating. However, none of them dared to make the slightest sound at this moment. Hence, they could only shout with all their might in their hearts. Everything that happened today, the tragic situation that happened today when Yuyin City was besieged. To all the people who died, these 5 people must die. All of you go. After a long time, Yin Nuoxing slowly sighed. He looked at the 4 people with endless exhaustion. Finally, he said softly. Everyone's gaze froze. They were all heartbroken. They could not help but beat their chests and stomp their feet. Why did he let them go? He knew the reason. He knew it very well. He knew it better than anyone else. However, the hand that was holding the Linghong sword could not cut down no matter what. Perhaps only when he was one step closer to death would his hand be able to cut down without hesitation. Sigh, he's just a child after all. Many people sighed in their hearts and shook their heads. After all, Yin Nuoxing was just a young man. He was not as ruthless as them. That's good. His choice is good. Such a young child. If his hands are stained with blood now, he will become a ruthless hero in the future. Jin Wang and the others were also a little disappointed. However, when they thought of this, they heaved a sigh of relief. This was not bad either. Xueqing and Murong Shuigo were also happy and slightly disappointed. However, this was his choice. This was the first Yin Nuoxing they saw. His eyes were clear and unfocused, as if he was an immature child. My lord, other people could not see it clearly, but Luo Lin and the other 3 saw it very clearly. They saw their lord grabbing onto Yin Nuoxing's trousers. That soft pleading voice also fell into their ears, causing their eyes to instantly turn red. Their legs could not help but bend as they all knelt down, their heads heavily hitting the ground. We will follow my lord, to face life and death together. The 4 unwavering roars made everyone sigh again. What a loyal and devoted subordinate. However, sometimes loyalty seemed to be useless. Scram. Are you going to stay here to die with me? It was unknown where the girl had managed to gather such a large amount of strength. Her furious roar caused Luo Lin and the others to tremble. After roaring, the girl coughed out another mouthful of blood. Her jade-like face was all messed up, and her breathing became even more hurried. However, Her eyes were still wide open as she stared at the four people in the distance. Luo Lin and the other three were finally unable to endure any longer when they saw this final, still stern gaze. A loud roar that resounded through the clouds was emitted from their mouths. Soon after, under everyone's anxious gazes, their feet suddenly stomped on the ground, causing the ground to explode. Their bodies transformed into four rays of light that charged out of Yuyin City in a flash, disappearing without a trace. Cough! The girl violently coughed out a mouthful of fresh blood. Her blood dyed the ground into a bright red rose. She watched as the four figures swiftly disappeared from her sight. Finally, a satisfied smile appeared on her face. She shut her eyes, and her small hands powerlessly drooped down. Chapter 127. Yun Nuoxing hurriedly lowered his head when he felt his trousers loosening. However, he saw the girl's peaceful expression and a smile on her lips. His pupil shrank, and he could not help but sigh. Ling Hongjian withdrew his body, and the water elements slowly surged out of his body. The blood stains on the girl's body also fell to the side under his control. The water elements turned into a cocoon and wrapped around her, lifting her up. Senior Divine King, I can't help much with the rest. I'll leave it to you guys. After sighing, Yun Nuoxing cupped his hands toward Jin Wang and the other two and transmitted his voice to them. His figure gradually floated into the sky. He looked at the outside of Yuyin City and flew out with the girl in tow. Where are you going? Seeing Yun Nuoxing fly away with the girl's corpse, Jin Wang was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly chased after them. Now that Ling Hongjian had appeared, many people in Yuyin City had set their eyes on him. Although he had resolved the crisis, some people would not appreciate it. After all, Yun Nuoxing and the others were only doing this to save themselves. His eyes flickered as he looked at the experts floating in the sky. Although many of them were injured, their movements were not affected. However, their gazes towards Yun Nuoxing were flickering with various emotions. No one knew what they were thinking. Senior Divine King, it's okay. They can't do anything to me. Shaking his head, Yun Nuoxing looked at the girl lying quietly in the water cocoon beside him. He sighed and said, I'll go. Find a good place to bury her. Speaking of which, I still don't know her name. What should be written on the tombstone? Abyss Shrine Master? No, this is a little weird. Hearing that he wanted to bury the girl, Jin Wang could not help but be stunned. Seeing that he was seriously considering this matter, his golden eyes were filled with astonishment. Is this an enemy? Young man, what do you mean by this? I know what I'm doing. However, no one is born good or bad. Who can say that someone is bad to the core? Bad people also have their soft and weak sides. It's just that they're in different positions. This is even more so in the world of cultivators. However, everyone is a unique creature in this world. The dead are gone, and the living are still here. Every dead soul needs a peaceful place to return to. Yun Nuoxing's indifferent and sincere words directly drilled into the Gold God King's heart. Like a heavy hammer, it directly struck his heart, causing his entire body to tremble a few times. Such a pure heart, such a clear person, was he really born in the world of cultivators? In this world where the strong were respected and the weak were prey to the strong, it was rare for such a person to be born who could comprehend the natural Tao of heaven and earth and be close to life. Child, don't worry. The 9 shrines will protect you. We will help you settle this damned matter. He patted Yun Nuoxing's shoulder forcefully. The Metal God King seemed to have been infected by Yun Nuoxing's actions. That sincere gaze of Yun Nuoxing flickered with starlight, causing him to shiver. Didn't he just say a few words from his heart? If anyone goes against little brother Yun, they're going against the 9 elemental shrine. Ignoring Yun Nuoxing's reaction, Jin Wang directly shouted at the top of his voice. Like a sound wave, it spread throughout Yuyin City, causing everyone in Yuyin City to tremble. This title, this promise, caused the faces of many people who coveted Yun Nuoxing to turn ugly. This sentence was undoubtedly warning them that if they wanted to touch Yin Nuashing, it was equivalent to touching the Nine Elemental Shrine. What kind of power was the Nine Elemental Shrine? Above the realm of the gods, they were all transcendent existences that no one dared to provoke. They were like an iron bucket. Provoking one of them would provoke the Nine Elemental Shrines. With such a powerful force behind her, at least Yin Nuashing would not have too many worries. Those people would not attack her openly, that was for sure. Thank you, Divine King. Yin Nuashing smiled. That bright and sunny smile was like the sun, causing Jin Jinwang's heart to soften. How could there be such a clean child? It made him feel like he was in the embrace of the sun. Help me tell Xueqing and Xuega that I'll be back soon. Nodding, Yin Nuashing smiled and did not stay any longer. With a thought, she quickly flew out of Yuyin City with the water cocoon. Jin Jinwang nodded solemnly and watched as Yin Nuashing left Yuyin City. Only then did he take a deep breath and slowly descend. Carrying the girl's corpse, he charged into the mountain range. His 6 wings slowly unfurled, and he finally brought her up to the peak of the mountain that looked very tall. The light from the corner of Yin Nuashing's eyes made her squint slightly. She looked towards the eastern sky. The 2 orange-red suns were struggling to climb up from the horizon. Unknowingly, one night had passed just like that. Scanning her surroundings, Yin Nuashing charged up to the tallest mountain peak and broke through the clouds. When she saw that the peak of the mountain was flat ground, she put down Ling Hongjian in satisfaction and brought the girl to land on the small mountain peak. With a casual grab, she took out the Fangtian halberd from her body. Yin Nuashing held it and swung around twice. She looked at the center of the mountain peak and took a deep breath. Her eyes suddenly turned sharp, and she smashed it down. Boom! The mountain peak trembled violently, and soil flew down from the top of the mountain. Yin Nuashing waved his sleeves and suppressed the dust. Then he saw that the divine weapon had directly chiseled a huge, deep hole in the ground. Looking at the deep pit with satisfaction, Yin Nuashing nodded. She slowly stretched out her hands and shouted. Water elements gathered on her hands. Then she slammed her palms forward and turned into 2 water dragons that plunged into the deep pit. The dry brown soil slowly turned dark yellow after coming into contact with the water elements. The water elements that filled the sky surged towards the bottom of the pit. Splash! After a long while, Yin Nuashing let out a long breath and wiped the sweat from her forehead. She looked at the small lake that was newly dug. She nodded and jumped down from the mountain peak. In a short while, she flapped her 6 wings and rushed to the top of the mountain. She was even carrying a tree that was a few meters tall in her hands. Hey! She planted the tree on the side of the cliff near the lake and buried its roots in the soil. After doing all this, she retreated to the side and looked at her masterpiece. She couldn't help but laugh. Bury me at the top of the mountain, under the grass, beside the clear lake. Yin Nuashing murmured softly. Back when she was traveling, she had told Yuyin that this was her ideal place to be buried. Looking at the girl beside her who was as quiet as a princess, Yin Nuashing couldn't help but shake her head. She walked to the bottom of the tree and used her hands to slowly dig a hole that was about the size of the girl's body. Then, she removed the water cocoon and held her cold body with both hands. She couldn't help but sigh. I still don't know your name. Looking at the quiet face, Yin Nuashing shook her head. She took out the purplish black dress that Ming liked from her pendant and gently put it on the girl. Then, she helped her tidy up her soft hair. She looked at the setting sun and then at the girl and pondered for a while. We met at night, but we parted at dawn. I'll call you Yishi. I'm not very good at naming. Don't laugh at me. Yin Nuashing muttered to herself. She couldn't help but laugh foolishly. Her handsome face blushed, and she muttered a few more words. Then, she nodded and stood up to pat her butt. Puffed. Just as she was about to bury Yishi, she suddenly heard a burst of laughter. She couldn't help but be stunned. She turned her sharp gaze and looked around. The Linghong sword suddenly appeared in her hand. Yin Nuashing shouted, "Who is it? Come out." However, as far as her eyes could see, she couldn't see anything. She couldn't help but frown. Was it an illusion? Scratching her head, Yin Nuashing sighed. She couldn't help but say that she was old. She turned her head and slowly carried Yishi up. She walked towards a small hole that she just dug and slowly squatted down. She closed her eyes and murmured, "I hope that your spirit in heaven can protect the people that you cherish. I hope that you can meet the most important person in your next life." Puffed. This time, the laughter was very clear to Yun Nuashing. He heard it very clearly. It was right here, right in his arms. Her closed eyes suddenly opened. She saw that Yishi's eyes were curved into crescents. Her wide sleeves covered her small mouth. Her small and delicate body couldn't help but tremble with laughter. Yin Nuashing's body stiffened. She didn't die, but he could feel that her life force was dissipating and her body was cold. No, why was there a temperature now? It was very weak, but very warm. I think the name Yishi is actually quite nice. Yishi smiled and opened her eyes. Her wine-red eyes contained a smile and some confusion. She stared at his pitch-black eyes and smiled. Right? Little praise of death. Aren't you? Yin Nuashing's handsome face turned red. His hands that were holding Yishi stiffened. He didn't know whether to let her go or not. It made him feel like he was in a daze. I died. Yishi smiled sweetly. Her innocent and lively appearance was completely different from the girl who controlled the life and death of the entire city last night. Even her temperament was different. But I'm alive again. As she smiled, Yishi suddenly opened her arms and hugged Yin Nuashing's neck. Her small body pressed hard against him. She smiled and said, "Listen, my heart is still beating." Seeing her actions, Yin Nuashing's handsome face turned even redder. He took a deep breath and hurriedly suppressed the hot and dry feeling that made his entire body heat up. He calmed his heart and listened carefully, then sighed. It was indeed still beating, but it was very weak, very weak. It seemed that even if Yishi had relied on some methods to survive, she had also paid an extremely heavy price. At the very least, he could feel that the injuries in her body were extremely serious. Right now, her meridians were completely broken, and there wasn't even the slightest bit of energy in her body. "Yes, you're still alive." Yin Nuashing smiled inexplicably and patted her back lightly with his palm. "Yes, I'm still alive. I cut off all my cultivation and survived with great difficulty. Little commendator, this is all thanks to you," said Yishi in a gentle way, which made Yin Nuashing's heart tremble. His face couldn't help but twitch. Hearing his heart stop for a moment, Yishi shook her head gently. Her small face pressed against Yin Nuashing's face, and she whispered, "I'm already dead. The one here now is not of the Abyss Temple, but Yishi, you're Yishi. So don't say anything. Let me understand your heart. I want to hear the unique heartbeat of the boy who woke me up." Hearing Yishi's soft words, Yin Nuashing nodded. He slowly stood up with her in his arms and walked to the side of the big tree. He leaned against the big tree and sat down gently. Ling Hongjian appeared silently. He opened a barrier and covered this small mountaintop, isolating it from the outside world. He didn't want to disturb the tranquility at this moment. After a long time, Yin Nuashing felt that the small hands around his neck had lost their strength. Only then did he let go of Yishi. Seeing that she was sleeping peacefully and her breathing was weak, he couldn't help but sigh. He took out a jade bottle from his pendant and opened the cork. He poured out a round green pill. 8 colored patterns were connected head to tail, covering the surface of the pill like a spiral pattern. Feeling the surging life force of the pill, Yin Nuashing sighed. He threw the pill into his mouth and chewed twice. A terrifying life force suddenly flowed into his body, rushing to his limbs and bones. However, before the pill's effect dissipated, Yin Nuashing made a hand seal with lightning speed. Suddenly, the green life force that rushed to his body stopped. His body emitted a green glow. Yin Nuashing's hand seal paused. Suddenly, many green threads slowly surged out from his skin, turning into slender threads. With a thought, these threads slowly wrapped around Yishi. A moment later, all the threads left his body and wrapped around Yishi's small body, forming a green cocoon of light. Surging life force slowly brewed in the cocoon of light. Yishi sleep. After this sleep, you will have a brand new life. You will be Yishi. Yin Nuoxing's hand caressed the green cocoon of light as he murmured softly. He then sat down cross-legged. All the sounds in this place faded. Only the cocoon of light flickered, like a beating heart. Within the cocoon of light, a new life full of life was slowly being born. Chapter 128. The jade-green cocoon of light wrapped around the tree. The flickering light, accompanied by a heart-like beating sound, quietly echoed in the sealed barrier. A rich life force spread to every inch of land on the mountaintop with every beat. Yin Nuoxing, who was cultivating, opened his eyes from time to time and looked at the light cocoon that was less than 10 feet tall. Some complicated emotions flashed through his eyes. His brows would occasionally furrow, occasionally relax, and occasionally raise, as if he was thinking of something happy. However, in the end, he would sigh as a signal to close his eyes. This repeated for a long time until the sun set in the west and the scarlet moonlight shrouded the sky. Only then did Yin Nuoxing wake up. His chaotic emotions made it impossible for him to calm down. She's the enemy. She almost killed everyone, but she is already dead. The one here now is Yishi, not the person from yesterday. Every time he wanted to say this to himself, his emotions would become more and more chaotic. His mind was like a ball of paste that kept churning, becoming more and more chaotic. Yin Nuoxing only felt very tired. If he brought Yishi back, he didn't know how to explain it. He didn't even know what to do. I only believe that everything I've done, the cause and effect of everything, will be borne by me. I will never have any regrets. The soft murmur made Yin Nuoxing take a deep breath. Then, his flickering eyes became firm. Yes, this was his true nature. He was fearless, unrestrained, and had no background or clan relatives. Only Yuan, Ming, Little Purple Soul, and perhaps Yishi would follow him on this journey. The only people he could hold on to and keep were these few people. The world was his home. He had no worries and no worries. He cared a lot about what others thought, but he was also learning to ignore them. Crack. After Yin Nuoxing made up his mind, the jade-green cocoon of light in front of him made a soft cracking sound. He looked up and saw that a piece of the cocoon's surface had cracked and flew out like a chick breaking out of its shell. Is she going to wake up? After a crack appeared in the cocoon of light, other small cracks also appeared in other parts of the cocoon and spread to the entire cocoon of light. Following a soft cracking sound, the jade-green cocoon of light shattered into green dust and slowly disappeared into the air. The petite figure curled up inside also slowly appeared. Yishi, his pitch-black eyes stared unblinkingly at the little figure as she opened her eyes. Her wine-red eyes seemed to be a little dazed, and after a while, she gradually woke up. Seeing Yin Nuoxing staring straight at her, the corners of her mouth could not help but curl up into a sweet smile. Her petite body hurriedly pounced down and crashed into his embrace. Hugging the petite figure tightly, Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath of Yishi's fragrance and put her down. Holding her face with both hands, he looked straight into her wine-red, gem-like eyes and said seriously, "Yishi, no matter what, I will protect you. I will not leave you alone." Looking at his solemn and serious expression, Yishi blinked her eyes. Although she looked very young, she had actually lived for many years. With just a glance, she could see all of Yin Nuoxing's emotions. How could she not know what he was thinking during this period of time? She then smiled and nodded her head vigorously, saying, "I will follow Big Brother No." Big Brother again. Hearing this nickname, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but bitterly laugh. However, he didn't say it out loud. There was one in the Red Star Academy, and there were two in Yin City. He didn't know what kind of earth-shattering thing would happen if these 3 or even 4 little girls were to meet. Placing his palm on Yishi's pulse, Yin Nuoxing sent a wisp of soul energy and would element in her body, carefully sensing the condition of her body. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The meridians that were originally completely broken were now completely connected. Furthermore, they seemed to be even more resilient than before. The life force that was originally almost exhausted in her body was now surging abnormally. At that time, even if Yishi had cut off all of her cultivation, she was still in a seriously injured state. If not treated in time, it would have been difficult for her to escape death. It was only with the help of Yin Nuoxing's pills that she was pulled back from the underworld. Her injuries are no longer a problem, but her cultivation, I can't do anything about it. Slowly withdrawing his soul energy, Yin Nuoxing glanced at Yishi. Placing his palm on her head, he gently rubbed it and sighed. Among the pills that Xianyin gave him, there were even immortal grade and peerless grade pills. Most of the effects of the pills were deeply imprinted in his mind. There were pills that could treat injuries in a drop in cultivation, but Yishi had cut off her cultivation. This process was irreversible, and even a divine grade pill wouldn't be able to restore her cultivation. Fortunately, cutting off one's cultivation wouldn't reduce the capacity of one's life force, which also meant that one's lifespan wouldn't be reduced. Looking at his sorrowful expression, Yishi shook her head slightly. She also knew about this. When Yin Nuoxing took out the pill that could sublimate 8 elements to heal her, she was really surprised. It's okay. As for cultivation, it'll be fine after refining it again. Yishi's indifferent expression made Yin Nuoxing smile bitterly. As a powerful cultivator at the peak of the Emperor of the Underworld, his cultivation had dropped to the level of a small cultivator of immortal grade. This kind of change was like turning the world upside down. No one would be able to bear it, but he couldn't see it. Yishi was a little disappointed. He couldn't see through her deep wine-red eyes, as if she really didn't care. Seeing his conflicted expression, Yishi smiled and ran behind the big tree. Yin Nuoxing raised his head. Hearing the rustling sound from the other side, his handsome face couldn't help but turn red. He quickly turned around. When Yishi came out again, she was still wearing the purple-black dress that Yin Nuoxing gave her. However, a lot of the sleeves were torn off. A section of her snow-white arm was exposed to the air. The wide sleeves even covered her small hands. Hearing the footsteps, Yin Nuoxing turned around. Seeing her familiar outfit, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. Holding the tattered black dress that she handed over, he walked to the small hole and threw it in. Then, he buried it with soil and stones, making a cenotaph. Just take it as a farewell to the past, brother, praise God. Yishi stood in front of her cenotaph. She put her hands together and patted them lightly. Then, she turned around and smiled at Yin Nuoxing. Shaking his head and sighing, Yin Nuoxing hugged her slender waist. His 6 wings slowly spread open, stirring up a gust of wind. He flashed towards Yuyin's city in the distance. With the help of the light elements, it only took a few minutes to return to Yuyin City. However, when he entered Yuyin City and saw the huge crack in the abyss, he couldn't help but sigh. Ling Hong's sword could only be released 3 times at its peak. Each strike was stronger than the previous one. Furthermore, it was multiplied. The second divine sword of the divine sword record, Ling Hong. It's really powerful. If it wasn't incomplete with its original attack, it could have killed me in body and soul. Yishi's eyes were filled with confusion as she gazed at the huge crack that cut across Yuyin City. Her muttering to herself caused Yin Nuoxing's body to tremble as he involuntarily tightened his grip on her. Don't you hate me? As soon as he said this, Yin Nuoxing regretted it. Yishi had just bid farewell to her past self. Now that she mentioned this, her mind couldn't wrap itself around it. I don't know if I hate you maybe a little, but I can't really explain it. Yishi shook her head. A complicated look flashed through her eyes. Lowering his head to look at her, Yin Nuoxing shook his head. Now that things had come to this, he could only walk down this path to the end. In the eastern part of Yuyin City, in the manor of the 9 Gods Hall, several god kings were sitting in the courtyard. They raised their wine cups and occasionally took a sip. A beautiful woman was holding her chin with her slender hand. Her eyes were indifferently looking at the red crescent moon in the sky. The 9 elites and Yu Yin's group were playing around in the courtyard. The laughter of the 2 children Ming and Ming filled the small courtyard. The tranquility of the night was somewhat lively. Yin Nuoxing, is that right? That child let them go. He even went to bury the corpses of his enemies. Hearing Jin Wang's narration of what happened last night, the beautiful woman's eyes flashed with astonishment. Especially after hearing what Yin Nuoxing said before leaving, she couldn't help but smile. This guy is really close to the Tao of living. With this kind of character, he definitely won't fail when he tries to become a god in the future. That's right. With such a pure temperament, he would be a top-notch jade. After a bit of polishing, he would become a good jade. He has a lot of options. There won't be any limitations. The Thunder God King also nodded in agreement. That's not right. Where's UXIN? Yao Hua's group of 9 on the side didn't hear a single word about UXIN. They were all stunned. After looking at each other for a while, they couldn't help but ask together. Hearing this question, Yu Yin's jade-like hand stiffened. Ming and Little Purple Soul were also speechless. However, they soon recovered their laughter and started a joke with Mu Ling and the others. However, the 3 of them were sweating. Only the 3 of them knew the truth. I don't know. She probably went to intercept those 4 people. Hearing this, Jin Wang shook his head. He didn't see UXIN and didn't know where that girl was. Oh, the 9 people nodded. UXIN, who had many divine tools, could indeed intercept those people. She didn't think about anything else. Therefore, after a moment of silence, they started to talk about other things. Everyone knew that Yin Nuoxing's name was probably known by the entire Yuyin city. It wasn't only because of the invasion of the Abyss Shrine, but also because of the divine sword that could split space. Ling Hong, Senior Godly King. Just as the courtyard regained its cheerfulness, a figure slowly descended from the sky and stood in the middle of the courtyard. Everyone paused and looked over. The moment they saw who it was, Jin Wang and the others spat out a mouthful of water. Yu Yin hurriedly covered Ming and Little Purple Soul's mouths, afraid that they would habitually shout for help. However, Mei Mao was also somewhat astonished. The person who came was naturally Yin Nuoxing. Beside her was a little girl with short burgundy hair. She had been hugging the former's stomach. When she landed, she looked at Jin Wang and the others with a strange expression. If they hadn't protected Yin Nuoxing, they would have been slapped to death by her. Moreover, they wouldn't have been able to break the formation. At that time, Yuyin City would still have been destroyed. How are you still alive? The moment they saw Yi Shi, Jin Wang, and the others jumped up. All the hair on their bodies stood on end, like a kitten with its fur standing on end. Especially when they saw that she seemed to be very close to Yin Nuoxing, they were stunned for a moment. At that time, they did feel that she was already dead. Her life fluctuations had completely stopped, but now, your cultivation. After the initial shock, the Gold God King and the others calmed down. They carefully sensed and sucked in a breath of cold air. However, they had some guesses. It seemed that in order to survive, Yishi had not hesitated to sever her cultivation. Moreover, she had severed it completely. They couldn't help but smile bitterly. She was at the peak of the emperor of the underworld. She was just one step away from becoming a godly emperor at the top of the pyramid in the realm of the gods. She was gone just like that. Those millions of years, everything she had worked for was gone in an instant. Godly King, who is she? Yao Hua couldn't help but ask when he saw the constantly changing expressions of Jin Wang and the others. They had all seen Yin Nuoxing before. Now that a strange girl had appeared, he was very surprised. Little girl, what's your name? What's your relationship with Yin Nuoxing? The wood spirit walked in front of Yi Shi and bent down. Her lively eyes were smiling as she looked at her. Yin Nuoxing was shocked and felt a little nervous. To be honest, he didn't know Yi Shi at all. He didn't know her personality. His understanding of her was like a blank piece of paper. She seemed to be speaking to him intimately, and her actions were also very intimate. However, that was because their relationship was a little complicated. No matter what, Yi Shi was once a high and mighty emperor of the underworld. Now, what surprised him was that Yi Shi actually smiled sweetly at the wood spirit and said, "My name is Yi Shi. Brother Nuo gave me this name." Once these words were spoken, everyone in the courtyard froze in place. Yin Nuoxing's heart seemed to have been squeezed. A drop of cold sweat slid down his forehead. His head stiffly turned towards Yuyin, But as expected, he saw that she was looking at him with a smile that was not a smile. Her beautiful eyes contained an indescribable feeling, and Ming Ming and little purple soul's bright gem-like eyes widened, as if they did not dare to believe it. "Ben, how should we end this?" Yin Nuoshing smiled bitterly in his heart. Yishi looked at him with a sweet smile. Chapter 129. At night in Yuyan City, the Ju Yuan Mountain Villa was hidden in the darkness. The fine lights were like fireflies, covering more than half of Yuyan City. The great battle yesterday had exhausted almost all of the people in the city. The ordinary citizens had fled, while the gods were engaged in endless battles. The entire city seemed to have become much more dispirited. In the manner of the 9 divine halls in the east, the gentle lights swayed in the breeze. The faint light enveloped the hall, projecting the many people who seemed to be having fun by the window. In the small courtyard outside the hall, only the purple dress beside the stone table added a trace of liveliness to the lonely courtyard. Yishi quietly sat on the stone bench. Her beautiful face, which was slightly young, had a trace of loneliness at this moment. Her crystalline eyes would occasionally look at the slender figure behind her. A complicated light flickered in her eyes. He just left me to the side and ignored me. Lying on the stone table, her little head resting on her arm, the loneliness in Yishi's heart became even stronger. He said that he would not leave her behind. Her eyes swept towards the closed door of the hall. Yishi clenched her little hands tightly and could not help but sigh. A moment later, her slender eyebrows creased as she indifferently said, "What are you doing standing behind someone else? If you have something to say, just say it." I did not expect your senses to still be so sharp even after your cultivation has dropped to such a level." Just as she finished speaking, a helpless, bitter sigh slowly sounded behind her. Then, a tall figure slowly appeared behind her. His appearance was golden. It was Jin Wang. "What? Do you want to seek justice for the people of Yuyan City, or something?" Yishi cast a sideways glance at Jin Wang before lying down again. Her little face was extremely calm as she indifferently said, "If you want to kill me, just do it. There's no need to talk about righteousness." Hearing Yishi's voice, which sounded like she had given up on herself, Jin Wang was taken aback. Then, as if he had understood something, he bitterly smiled and said, "I did not say anything, nor do I want to do anything. I just want to talk to you." "Talk? What do we have to talk about?" Yishi raised her eyebrows and looked at Jin Wang with her deep eyes. Her tone was aggressive, and she couldn't help but have the temperament of a superior. Even though she had become an ordinary person, the temperament of the former emperor of the underworld had not changed. Under Yishi's gaze, even Jin Wang felt somewhat unnatural. Shaking his head, he poured himself a cup of wine and took a sip. A moment later, he sighed and said, "It has already been tens of thousands of years since we last met. Tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. After living for so long, I have become somewhat muddle-headed. You still remember me. It's rare that I didn't leave a brilliant mark in your life, right? Could it be that you used to like me? I'm sorry, but I have someone I care about now. I advise you to give up on this thought as soon as possible." Yishi's eyelids drooped slightly as she shook her head and spoke in a self-deprecating manner. If Yin Nuoshing heard these words, her jaw would drop. The two of them were actually old acquaintances. Last night, they were still fighting fiercely. If they didn't mention it, no one would have guessed it. Jin Wang rolled his eyes and looked at the indifferent face that had never changed. He slowly took a breath and said, "Don't be so narcissistic. I'm not a pedophile, nor a lolicon. When we parted, you were still the queen of hell. No, the demon king. How did you join the Abyss Temple? What happened in these tens of thousands of years?" Jin Wang sighed and shook his head. He took a sip of wine and continued without waiting for Yishi to speak. "When I heard that voice last night, I thought of you. More or less, I was a little confused. I didn't do anything for righteousness or anything. I just wanted to stop you. When we last met, you weren't a person who regarded life as grass and everything as straw dogs. People change. You said it yourself. Tens of thousands of years ago. After so many years, it's possible to completely change a person's nature and character. Yishi also poured herself a glass of wine and took a sip. She couldn't help but sigh and said, 50,000 years ago, I was summoned by the Abyss Temple. Hearing her speak, Jin Jinwang's expression became serious. He gently put down the glass and quickly pricked up his ears to listen. Perhaps this was a reason why she changed. When I was still training in hell, I met you that year. At that time, you weren't the divine king of the Golden Temple. You were just a little divine king who went out to train. With the strength of Shunming, you challenged me who was already a divine god. In the end, you lost miserably. Now that I think about it, I really miss that time. Hearing Yishi expose his dark history, Jin Jinwang's old face turned red, and he couldn't help but roll his eyes. What's wrong with him challenging her? He was young and arrogant. Seeing his unconvinced look, Yishi couldn't help but laugh and said, even now, no, yesterday, you still couldn't beat me. At that time, what did you call me? Black-bellied Lolita. I really want to beat you up. After your training in hell, I won the title of Demon King and ruled over a part of hell. Just like that, I lived a carefree life for a long time. About 70,000 years, that is, 100,000 years ago. On that day, I heard that you had won the title of Divine King. I wanted to go to Divine Land to see your king-conferring ceremony. Yishi took a sip of wine and slammed the glass on the table with a bang. After a while, she said, that day, the people of the Abyss Temple ransacked the part of hell that I ruled. Jin Jinwang's expression changed. Hell was ransacked? Why didn't he receive any news of such a big event? It should have been an earth-shattering event. You know this news, but it's not quite the same as what you know. At that time, there should be a saying that part of hell became an empty city, because the Abyss Temple did things very secretly. Just like yesterday, if the magic formation was completely activated, the next day, there would only be a destroyed Yuyan city, and there wouldn't be any news of us coming, Yishi said faintly. Jin Jinwang nodded. The magic formation of the Abyss Temple was almost unbreakable. If it weren't for Yin Nuashing, Yuyan City would have ceased to exist. You can guess what happened after that. 50,000 years after my death, when I reappeared, I was in the Abyss Temple. My remnant soul was scattered and drifted in the sky. I couldn't be reunited and reincarnated. The Abyss Temple used a secret method to reunite my soul and resurrect me. Yishi took another sip of wine. Her face was a bit rosy and she looked very attractive. Why didn't you call me? When I left, I gave you a jade slip. You could have used it to inform me. I could have gathered the experts of the Golden Temple and even the 9 temples to reinforce you in hell. It would have only taken a few minutes. Jin Jinwang frowned and couldn't help but sigh. Yesterday, you used all kinds of methods. Did you manage to send out the news? Yishi smiled and shook her head. If she could have called them over at that time, there wouldn't have been any of this later. Jin Jinwang was stunned and then nodded awkwardly. Yesterday, they really didn't manage to send out the news, and yesterday, after 50,000 years, the Abyss Temple made a strong comeback. They had been silent for too long, and it was time to announce their existence to the world. My 4 subordinates who were loyal to me were the first to take action. As a result, we died before we could achieve anything. That brat. Speaking of this, Yishi shook her head. In her eyes, there was a trace of strangeness, a trace of hatred, and a trace of joy. She said, now I should call him Brother Nua. Ling Hongjian is indeed worthy of being the second divine sword. The power of space that I condensed was swallowed by it. Is this considered shooting myself in the foot? Did I hit the nail on the head? The courtyard was silent for a while. Jin Jinwang sighed heavily. Yishi also put down the wine cup. She raised her head and looked at the blood-red crescent moon. Her deep eyes were a bit lonely. What are you going to do? After a long sigh, Jin Jinwang raised his head and drank a cup of wine. Looking at the girl beside him who had her eyes closed, he couldn't help but ask, my cultivation has been destroyed. I can't go anywhere. Even if I returned to the Abyss Temple, I would just be a cripple. Now, Yishi's eyes trembled slightly. She lowered her head and looked at the pair of golden eyes. After a long time, when Jin Wang's face turned red, she looked away, drank a cup of wine, and murmured, "Now, I want to stay by Brother Nua's side." At that time, even if I cut off my cultivation, it was still not enough to survive. The corrosive power of Ling Hongjian was too strong, so I gave up and didn't struggle. It was he who saved me. If Brother Nua hadn't made me laugh this morning, I probably would have continued to fake my death until Brother Nua buried me. Jin Wang was slightly taken aback. No matter who looked at it, Yishi's experience was indeed worthy of sympathy. She died 100,000 years ago, but was forcibly resurrected 50,000 years later. Today, 50,000 years later, she was once again facing death. Perhaps this was just an insignificant pain for her. "I'm very curious about how Yun Nuashing saved you," Jin Wang asked again. Yishi's Mei Mao paused, narrowed her eyes slightly, and stared at him sharply. "I won't harm him. You don't have to worry about that." Seeing her vigilant look, Jin Wang couldn't help but smile bitterly. Hearing this, Yishi's eyes were still narrowed. She stared at Jin Wang for a long time, but she shook her head and said, "Wood element." She didn't say it out loud. She had lived in this world for countless years. Although she was young, she was as smart as anything. Now, Yun Nuashing's status was a little different to her. Naturally, she wouldn't say anything unnecessary. "I see." Jin Wang nodded. He seemed to believe her, which made her look a little strange. "No matter what happens in the future, I want to stay by his side now. Not as a demon king of hell, not as a member of the Abyss Shrine. Now, I am Yishi, Brother Nua's Yishi. Other than that, I am nothing else." Yishi suddenly said resolutely. Jin Wang's eyes narrowed. Yes, after all, she had died twice. 2 generations of identities had turned to dust with death. Since she had made this choice, then so be it. Brother Nua is the praise of death. The dead are gone, and the living are still here. Brother Nua may not know it himself, but death is very sacred in his heart. Only those who have died once, or even several times, can say such a thing. Other than myself, Brother Nua is the first person I have seen who has said such a thing, Yishi said with a very mysterious smile. After all, that guy's heart is very pure. Jin Wang thought silently. "I wish you happiness." Jin Wang raised his glass to her and smiled. These words, which had a deeper meaning, made Yishi blush. She couldn't help but lower her head. Then she glared at him fiercely and said softly, "What nonsense are you talking about? How old am I? Even if I can't." Her little mouth opened and closed, but she found that there were 2 sentences that she couldn't say. This made her blush even more. Jin Wang saw this and laughed evilly. He said, "What I mean is that little guy is not bad. He will be someone important in the future. If you follow him, maybe your cultivation will be restored to its original level. Look at what you are thinking." This evil laugh made Yishi's blush spread to her ears. She was so angry that her delicate body trembled, but she couldn't do anything. Moreover, age is not a problem. The Emperor of the Underworld has a long lifespan. In the future, he will also be a powerful person whose name can shake a region. If he doesn't care, why do you care? The soft whisper made Yishi slightly stunned. Her eyes showed some confusion. Suddenly, a pair of strong arms landed on her body. Yishi felt her body become light as she was carried up. Her heart couldn't help but jump. When she looked carefully, she saw that it was Yun Nuashing. Jin Wang had tugged at her heartstrings, which made her feel even more flustered. "Yishi, it's cold outside. You are wearing so little. Aren't you cold?" Yun Nuashing lowered her head and covered Yishi with a large windbreaker. She looked at Yishi's blushing face and smelled something. She couldn't help but twitch a few times. Then she frowned and said in a low voice, "You drank?" Yishi's little face was red as she hurriedly buried her face in his shoulder and nodded gently. Yun Nuashing frowned even more. Then she looked at Jin Wang and couldn't help but say, "Senior Divine King, Yishi is still young. Why don't you watch her when she drinks?" Jin Wang laughed bitterly. "Young? She is tens of thousands of times older than you, dear. You are not allowed to drink in the future." If you want to drink, drink when you are older. Yin Nuoxing gently patted Yi Shi's head and said gently. When Yi Shi heard this, she nodded her little head obediently. Yin Nuoxing smiled in satisfaction. Jin Jinwang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This girl had actually become obedient in front of him. After informing Jin Jinwang, Yin Nuoxing carried Yi Shi in a hall. In the courtyard, only the sound of the night wind could be heard. Jin Jinwang poured a cup of wine and toasted to the moon. Then, he slowly drank it. If those people back then knew that Shinran, who was once one of the 8 great beauties of the God realm, now had some unclear feelings for a little boy who was hundreds of thousands of years younger than her, I wonder if they would kill their way here. This world is really very interesting. Chapter 130. Early in the morning, when the first ray of sunlight shone down from the sky and pierced through the darkness that enveloped the land, Yuyin City gradually regained its vitality. The ray of light quietly shone into the room and landed on the face of the young lady in red who was seated cross-legged. Her 6 broad wings flapped from time to time, bringing about a burst of thunderous roars. The vigorous wind elements caused her body to float a foot into the air. Her red robes fluttered in the wind, and her ink-black hair also danced wildly with her robes. Behind the girl, there were 2 small figures who were sleeping soundly. The thunderous sound of the wind did not wake them up at all. On the other side of the room, there was a little girl who was about 10 years old, sitting cross-legged on the sofa. Her short, wine-red hair was particularly eye-catching. Her long, unrestrained black hair fluttered in front of her, making her seem more lively and lively. At this moment, there was a black aura circling around the girl's body. It was like mist, but also like a whirlwind. It constantly circled around her body and was very strange. When that ray of light shone on the girl's face, the wind element that filled the room suddenly paused. Then, in a few breaths, it disappeared. Her floating body slowly landed on the bed. The 6 wings on her back also disappeared with a hum. At the same time, the black aura circling around the girl's body gradually disappeared. The 2 of them opened their eyes at almost the same time. Big Brother Nuo, when you cultivate, it's so noisy. When she opened her eyes, the girl glared at the girl on the bed. She had been listening to the sound of the wind and thunder for the entire night. If it weren't for the fact that she had a much better temper than normal people, she would have been woken up from her cultivation. Little she, calling me that will easily kill me. The girl on the bed bitterly smiled. Opening her 6 wings would help her sense the elemental energy, making her cultivation much more efficient. However, the sound of the wind was indeed a problem. That's why I asked you to choose an empty room last night, but you insisted on coming over with Ming and the others. The girl was naturally Yuexine. Last night, Yin Nuoxing left Yi Shi in the manor and went out for a stroll. When he returned, he changed into Yuexine's identity and was tortured by Yin and the 2 girls. He even pretended not to know Yi Shi and messed around with them. This made their expression strange. They wanted to take off the mask on his face and directly expose his identity. Changing his identity like this was too troublesome. Currently, I am the last to enter the family. I have to have a good relationship with Ming and the others. Isn't that right, big sister 5 elements? Yi Shi smiled and looked at Yuexine. Yesterday, when Yin Nuoxing changed his identity and came back, she didn't pay attention to him. It was only when she sent him a sound transmission that he understood. Yuexine rolled his eyes. There was nothing he could do about this girl calling out random names. However, speaking of elements, he looked at Yi Shi in confusion for a while before saying, "Little Shi, that shouldn't be the power of elements, right?" She was talking about this strange black energy. It was like water and air, and it also had the power of death. It seemed to have exceeded the scope of the elemental energy. Of course, it's not the elemental energy. It's a new energy derived from the elemental energy's own willpower. Yi Shi also knew what she was talking about. She nodded and said, "After entering the initial God level, you can already use your willpower to transform your body. Body, soul, spirit, elemental energy, and even the container that stores the elemental energy. Yin Nuashing was stunned. He had never heard of this before. The energy in the initial god level is the elemental energy. The energy below the mortal level is the elemental energy. The immortal level is the immortal energy. The devil level is the demonic energy. Every level is changing energy. When the energy in the body reaches the limit, it will be compressed and expanded many times, resulting in a qualitative change. Yishi stretched lazily and said softly, "Every revolution is a compression to the limit and an expansion of the container. This is the so-called cultivation. The initial God level is made up of the Divine Son, Divine Venerable, Divine King, Divine Emperor, Divine Underworld, Divine God, Underworld King, Underworld Emperor, and Divine Emperor. Under each level, there are 9 turns. I was once an Underworld Emperor and was only one step away from the Divine Emperor. However, speaking of this, Yishi looked at Uxin with a bit of bitterness. The latter covered half of her face and turned her head away, pretending that she did not see anything. Even the most generous person would go crazy if they saw their countless years of cultivation return to their original state. It was a miracle that Yishi did not fight with her. Of course, if she heard the conversation between Yishi and Jin Jinwang last night, she might be able to understand a little. After a moment, Uxin tilted her head and asked again, "Then what is your element now?" "Death." It should be called Death Chi. The elements that I originally controlled were wind, water, and fire. After fusing and transforming them, they became like this. As for why it's Death Chi, I just said that it's changed according to my own will. Whatever you want it to be, it's what you want it to be. Of course, there's a certain degree of difficulty in transforming your will. It depends on what you want it to be, Yishi said softly. She slightly stretched out her left hand. A green whirlwind, blue water, and red flames intertwined on her palm. On her right hand, a black death chi was floating. It looked like a whirlwind, like a flame, and like a liquid. It seems that even after the will transformation, she can still use the original elements. However, Big Sister Uxin, you don't need to know this in detail. It's not good for Big Sister to know this too early. You should work hard to break through to the half-immortal and immortal realm first. Yishi gave her a flirtatious look, making Uxin bitterly smile. "Aren't you also in the mortal realm now?" Uxin muttered, making Yishi roll her eyes. She was worried that she couldn't cultivate. In any case, she was once an Underworld Emperor expert who broke through to the God Emperor realm. As long as she had enough time, she would be able to cultivate back to the Underworld Emperor realm. She might even be able to advance further. Kneeling on the bed, facing each other, Yishi stretched out her small white hand and placed it on Uxin's chest. The latter's body emitted some chi. Faint scarlet runes appeared on the surface of her body. Even her long black hair was dyed with a scarlet color. It was very strange. After a long time, Yishi withdrew her delicate hand. Her small face had a trace of seriousness. She raised her head and looked at Uxin. After muttering for a while, she muttered, "It's actually the soul burning formula. You know this Xian technique?" Uxin was a little surprised to hear her speak of the profound art that she was cultivating. This profound art had always existed in her memories. She only used it to cultivate because she felt that it was quite good. Spiritual force and spiritual force could be interchanged. However, when using it, it would consume spiritual force. And what Uxin valued the most was that the soul-burning formula could integrate other Xian techniques and then rewrite them. The flame demon burning the heavens technique that she obtained in the Red Star Academy was also included in the soul-burning formula. Yishi nodded and said in a deep voice, "In the past, there was a king of hell expert who cultivated the soul-burning formula. Facing the encirclement of more than 10 underworld emperors, he killed them all. With the help of the soul-burning formula, he devoured their cultivation, life source, and soul. The forces behind those underworld emperors were enraged. They sent out emperor god experts to encircle him. But in the end, that person escaped. After an unknown amount of time, the few major powers that were involved were all destroyed in a single night. All of the experts had their essences devoured. That method was done by that person back then. I want to talk about the other people one by one. In general, this Xian technique is quite evil. Those who cultivate this Xian technique, as long as they don't die and are able to endure the 12 tribulations of the burning soul formula, they will be able to become an expert. After finishing her words, Yishi raised her head and saw Yuxian's mouth slightly open. Her eyes were in a daze. She was a little speechless. Was it necessary to listen to a story? So, this so-called soul-burning formula is very attractive to initial god experts. Yuxian came back to her senses and said, "Of course, to be able to integrate other Xian techniques and rewrite one's own Xian technique. This is the only one under the heavens. Even I am envious of it. If this news were to spread, big sister fun, you will be captured by many people and forced to hand over the burning soul method." Yishi smilingly said a terrifying matter that made Yuxian's hair stand on end. "Here, I'll give it to you." Yuxian curled her lips and let out a cold shiver. She then extended her hand and tapped on Yishi's head. Shortly after, the latter felt a large amount of information flow through her finger, causing her to be slightly stunned. She slowly closed her eyes and received this large amount of information. After the information was transmitted, Yuxian put down her hand. Yishi felt it for a long time before opening her eyes. In her wine-red eyes, there was surprise and joy. She looked at Yuxian and said weakly, "You're giving it to me just like that. Little she is envious. How can I not give it to you?" Yuxian smiled and rubbed her head. Hearing this, Yishi's eyes were filled with excitement. The soul-burning formula's name was probably known by many gods. Other than being able to integrate Xian techniques, the other attraction was its grade. It would increase as the practitioner's cultivation increased. In other words, if one cultivated the soul-burning formula, it would be enough to cultivate this Xian technique. There was no need to change the Xian technique as one's cultivation increased. Just based on these points, the Xian technique itself was a priceless treasure. Even if there were gods who were willing to kneel down and beg for it, they would not be able to get it. After all, it was already extinct, and this is also for you. You also cultivate the fire element. Well, I don't know if this will be useful to you now. Yuxian smiled and touched Yishi's forehead again. Instantly, an even bigger amount of information rushed into Yishi's mind like a wild beast. However, Yishi's sea of consciousness and spirit were already incomparably strong. She would not be affected by it. She was not like Yin Nuoxing, who had fainted for a long time when she first learned it. Phew! After passing on the Xian technique, Yuxian heaved a sigh of relief. She wiped the sweat off her forehead. It was not easy to pass on the technique. Her mind felt like it was being stirred up by a wooden stick. Flame Demon Burning Heaven's Technique. After receiving the news, Yishi's face was no longer calm, but was completely shocked. The Fire Elemental Profound Art was the highest level of profound arts, a profound art that surpassed the divine rank. Everyone in the Red Star Academy, even if they were at the same level as them, they would definitely covet it. However, no one had ever had any other thoughts about it. Yishi's body also had the fire element. Since the Flame Demon Burning Heavens technique was known as the strongest fire element Xian technique, it must have its strong points. However, she did not know if the fire element that had been transformed by her could still cultivate this Xian technique. Sister Yin, where did you get this? Have you entered the Red Star Academy? Did you complete the 9th level trials there? Passed the divinity test? Got the attention of the Great Elder? Became the champion of the King level competition that is held once every 4 years? Or is your home the Red Star Academy? Yishi suddenly pounced and pushed Yuxian onto the bed. Riding on her body, she looked down and asked a bunch of questions. Yuxian could not help but smile bitterly. To be able to make an underworld emperor lose her composure, she could be considered to be very successful. What's there to be excited about? Isn't it just a Xian technique? Because my cultivation is not high enough, there are many things that are sealed and cannot be used. Yuxian shook her head and sat up. Yishi was still riding on her thighs. She opened her eyes wide and stubbornly stared at her, as if she wanted an answer. It's just a profound art. Yishi looked at her in different expression and could not help but smile bitterly as she shook her head. Elder sister, 5 elements. This is not just a profound art. This is the strongest fire elemental profound art in the entire realm of the gods. There is no other like it. It is the belief and pursuit of all fire elemental cultivators. However, the Red Star Academy system is very strict. To obtain, to inherit this flame demon burning the heavens incantation is too difficult. Based on my experience, in this era, only 5 people have successfully carried the flame demon burning the heavens incantation out of their minds. Moreover, there are many strong cultivators in the Red Star Academy. There was once an emperor god who went to cause trouble, but before he could even enter the academy, his body and soul were destroyed and turned into ashes. Furthermore, he did not even know who did it. So many people only think about this Xian technique. If they want to obtain it, they have to obediently stay in the Red Star Academy. Yishi spoke with a deluge of heavenly flowers, causing Yu Xan to be dumbfounded. She scratched her head and said, "Is it that powerful?" In her impression, the people in the Red Star Academy were a group of people with strange, innate talents and different personalities. They were like wolves and tigers. Yishi did not know whether to laugh or cry as she nodded and muttered. "So, I am very curious as to how Sister obtained this Xian technique." There was still a sentence that she did not say, and passed it to me so easily an acquaintance gave it to me. However, Yu Xian did not elaborate. However, this sentence made Yishi understand a lot. It seemed that the people in the upper echelons of the Red Star Academy were familiar with the former. However, Yishi would never have thought that acquaintance was the principal of the academy. Chapter 131. Why do I feel like I own more and more? After sitting on Yu Xian's lap for a long time, Yishi couldn't help but sigh. She looked at Yu Xian with a complicated expression. She climbed down from Yu Xian's lap and quietly sat on the side. She had a strange expression on her face. First, it was the 8-element high-level Dan. Then it was the 2 priceless Xian techniques. Even though Yishi was an emperor of the underworld, she still felt that it was too precious. It was so precious that she couldn't afford it. Just the Dan alone was worth all of her wealth. I'm bound to him for the rest of my life. Yishi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Even if she sold herself, she wouldn't be worth that price. Seeing Yishi's expression flicker slightly, Yu Xian also guessed what she was thinking. The corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up into a smile. She gently moved behind Yishi on the bed and gently hugged Yishi with both hands. She felt Yishi's small body slightly stiffen, and only after a while did she relax. She then muttered, "You don't need to pay me back. Since you've already called me Big Sister, how can I be stingy with what Xiaoxi wants?" Yishi's face turned red. She nodded and was about to say something when she heard Yu Xian's evil laughter. "But I have a condition." "What?" Yishi swallowed her saliva with difficulty. She murmured uneasily. Her heart was beating like a drum. Seeing her uneasy appearance, Yu Xian couldn't help but smile evilly. She licked her lips and slightly lowered her head. She blew hot air into Yishi's ear. Yishi's body stiffened. Then she said, "I want to boom." It seemed like a soul lotus exploded in her head. Yishi's eyes turned red. Her heart was beating fast. She clenched her fists in her wide sleeves. Could it really be like what Jin Jinwang said? But, seeing her trembling with anger, Yu Xian smiled and continued, "Live well." Eh. Her red face suddenly became white. Yishi raised her head in astonishment and saw that Yu Xian had lowered her head and was looking at her with a serious expression. That expression of hers was actually a bit serious and solemn, which made her startled again. This guy actually dared to tease me. Her indecent elder sister was good at whetting people's appetites and teasing people's heartstrings. The final answer made her heave a sigh of relief, but also a little disappointed, yes. Yishi seriously looked at Yu Xian and forcefully nodded. For this third life, and a completely new life, even if it was for her own sake. Since she had chosen to wake up that day, she would treat herself well. Seeing Yishi agree, Uxin was completely relieved. Falling from the underworld emperor realm to the mortal realm, no cultivator would be able to withstand such a blow. She didn't see anything unusual about Yishi, but she still couldn't relax. It wasn't that she was distressed over her pills, but she didn't want her life to be lost so easily. Right? I'm a little curious. Patting Yishi's head, Uxin sat beside her, looked at her, and said, "Destroy the fake group and expose the real group. Who are you talking about?" Hearing her question, Yishi tilted her head and smiled sweetly, but mysteriously said, "Elder sister will know. In the not-too-distant future, the day the purple night dark flame erupts, elder sister will know." Uxin was startled, speechlessly shook her head. Then, as if she thought of something, she said, "Abyss Shrine also wants the purple night dark flame?" If the Abyss Shrine also wanted the purple night dark flame, to her, it was very bad news. She had already experienced the strength of this shrine once. Just 5 people almost destroyed Yuyin City. If an army came, no one would be able to snatch the purple night dark flame from them. No. Yishi shook her head. Yishi lightly shook her head, looked at Uxin, and said, "Our operation is the first operation of the Abyss Shrine. There are other operations in other places to announce to the God world. Our return, our comeback. Coincidentally, we know that the divine flame of Yuyin City is about to erupt, so we came here to take a look. If we could take it while we're at it, that would be the best thing. If we can't, it's not a big deal." Uxin bitterly smiled, so it was just a matter of convenience. It seemed that the divine flame ranked 90 was indeed not enough to enter the eyes of the Emperor of the Underworld. That's right. Speaking of the purple night dark flame, Uxin remembered something that he had tossed to the back of his mind. That forbidden array was activated by little Shi, right? Are there any other powerful arrays that can borrow the power of a divine artifact? Borrow the power of divine weapons. Yishi's 2 small hands rubbed a few times, thought for a while, then nodded, and said, "Yes, but the Linghong sword is too powerful. I'm afraid that the formation won't be able to withstand the power of the Linghong sword. What about something 1 level lower, such as a high-level divine weapon?" Uxin continued. "There is a 7th level divine level formation." Yishi slightly paused, then smiled, and said, "Brother, isn't it better if you go directly to the divine weapon shrine to ask for one? With the research of those strange fellows on divine weapons, the formation of the divine weapon shrine will be much higher level than ordinary formations that condense divine weapons. It can unleash the power of divine weapons to the extreme." Hearing her saying the word ask especially long, Uxin bitterly smiled, shook her head, and said, "That's my last resort. Unless I have no other choice, I don't want to provoke others." Seeing her seriously pondering, Yishi was a bit startled. Could it be that she was thinking about the violet night dark flame? There were more than 1 or 2 forces paying attention to Yuyin City. Since the news had spread to the Abyss Shrine, then many ancient forces must have heard about it. She was just a mortal. What did she have to compete for it? It's because I'm only a mortal. If I want to compete, I need to use other methods. Don't forget, I broke the great formation that the Abyss Shrine was so proud of. Looking at the shocked little face, Uxin couldn't help but smile and softly stroked Yishi's head. Hearing this, Yishi looked at that pair of clear eyes that were similarly stubborn. Her brows furrowed slightly. A moment later, she finally sighed and shook her head with a bitter smile. She muttered, "My worrisome elder sister. Take out the divine weapon and let little Shi have a look. I'll see what formation is more suitable. If it doesn't work, I'll take you to the divine weapon shrine." Yishi said helplessly. After a short contact, she also knew that Uxin was stubborn. Once she decided on something, even 10 underworld emperors couldn't change her mind. Moreover, she had the light element. Maybe she could really win? Uxin nodded. Her palm lightly touched the pendant. With a flash of light, a large pile of things fell into a pile and fell onto the bed. As for Yishi, She opened her little mouth wide in shock. Within her eyes, there was a hint of disbelief. Almost all of them are here. Then she took out the uninvited guys from her body and threw them on the bed. Uxin clapped her hands and smiled. Gulp. Yishi stretched out her head and swallowed hard. Her small, fair hand gently stroked the pile of divine artifacts, trembling slightly. These were all high-grade divine artifacts. If someone at the same level as her casually took out any one of these divine artifacts to deal with her, it would be as easy as blowing off dust. Brother, where did you get these 7th or 8th level divine weapons? Yishi really couldn't see through Uxin at this time. At first, it was the Ling Hong sword, then the high-level pills and 2 priceless techniques, and the pile of divine weapons. At this time, she was somewhat numb. Uxin was only a mortal. She shouldn't have come into contact with things of this level, right? An acquaintance of the Red Star Academy? Thinking of this relationship, Yishi calmed down a little, but she was still a little confused. Just these things added together would not be less than the wealth of a god of hell. An acquaintance would not be able to take out so many things. Could it be a relative? There are many reasons. Seeing her shocked, Uxin could not help but smile bitterly and shook her head. She pondered for a while and looked at Yishi's shocked face. Frowning, she sighed. Little she is not an outsider. Hearing this, Yishi was startled. Immediately, she saw Uxin take out the Ling Hong sword and released a barrier, enveloping the two of them. Only then did she tell everything about her. God! After listening for a while, Yishi was shocked. She reached out her little hand to stop Uxin from continuing. She quickly said, Sister, don't say any more. If the things about you spread out, it will cause a big earthquake in the realm of the gods. What's wrong? Uxin scratched her head, not understanding. It was true that such a person was too far away for her, too far away. But it was not enough to cause a stir in the realm of the gods. Yishi smiled bitterly and shook her head. If it was someone who was not easy to talk to, they might just rob her. What else could she do? Sister, in the realm of the gods have disappeared for countless years. In the second half of this era, almost no one has seen such a strong person. That Sister Xian might be a strong person in the first half of this era. And sister, you might be like me, cutting off your cultivation and even your soul, causing you to lose your memories. As for why, perhaps only Sister Xianin, who used to know you, knows. Yishi held Uxin's face with both hands and said softly, So, you have a god's treasures, inheritance, and even her god's park weapon. Don't say these things casually in the future, even if it's someone closest to you, sister. It was the first time Uxin saw she being so careful. She could not help but be stunned for a while. She looked to the side at the two girls, Ming, who were still sleeping soundly, and nodded. Yes, I won't say it casually in the future. Seeing this, Yishi nodded, but the next sentence caused her entire face to darken. Because at that time, Sister Yuin and Ming were watching from the side. You don't have to say it. Seeing her smile as if it did not matter, Yishi felt a sense of defeat. Her heartless sister, shaking her head with a bitter smile, Yishi could only give up on discussing this with Uxin. She felt that if she said anything more, she would be defeated. She knocked on a divine artifact with her hand, then looked at the many divine artifacts and could not help but shake her head. Brother, let's go rob the sacred artifact shrine. Yishi's words surprised her, but the former continued. My 7th grade divine artifact formation can connect 4 or 5 7th grade divine artifacts is already not bad. If more are added, the entire formation will not be able to handle it and collapse. Only the sacred artifact shrine's great formation can perfectly accommodate so many divine artifacts at the same time. Uxin nodded. She first thought of robbing the sacred artifact shrine when she was in Constellation City. She saw them make a huge formation that could hold hundreds of demonic artifacts. But it won't be easy to rob the sacred artifact shrine. Uxin scratched her head in distress. Don't worry, there's still that old guy for seal gods and underworld, plus your Ling Hong sword. Oh, I can't use it in front of them, but the 4 of them are enough. The Divine King's title isn't just for show, unless there's a king of underworld from the Sacred Weapon Shrine. Of course, I don't think they'll pay much attention to the Purple Night Dark Flame. The time of a strong cultivator is very precious. Taking something that's not very useful to them is a waste of time. Yishi said indifferently. Uxin smiled bitterly. The thing she was still trying to chase after was trash in the eyes of others. Chapter 132. In the room of the manor, the blue light flickered. At the same time, there was a strange wave that carried a terrifying destructive power. It was as if it could tear the manor apart. Every time the destructive power gathered to a certain extent, it would quickly disperse. No, it's too slow. It's better for you to start with small magic circles. When you can create a magic circle with just a thought, you'll pass. In the room, there was another bright light that lasted for a long time. Finally, a clear voice was heard. After this voice was heard, the room instantly dimmed. Boom! The sudden explosion caused everyone in the manor to jump up like birds startled by the twang of a bow. Then they saw billowing black smoke coming out from the roof. The destructive power slowly dispersed. No, it's for you to gather a one-time explosion. It's not spreading or lasting. If you don't gather enough explosive power, it won't be of much use. Gather the energy until it's only the width of a finger and explode in one go. Boom! With a violent explosion, the entire estate shook as if there was an earthquake. The cups of wine on the stone table in the courtyard all fell to the side. The God Kings looked at the churning black smoke and looked at each other. They only felt rather helpless. Boom! Another loud explosion was heard. Debris in a 10-feet wide energy beam shot into the sky. The energy overflowed. Yao Hua and the others couldn't help but wipe their sweat. So tough. Jin Wang silently poured a cup of wine. So tough. The Fire God King took a sip and shook his head. The house collapsed again. The Thunder God King smiled faintly. It's still exploding. The beautiful woman smiled bitterly. She patted Ming's head. Sister, are you okay? Ming and Little Purple Soul whispered. However, their eyes didn't look at the smoking room at all. They didn't look worried at all. Sister Uxin, she's been trained. With spirit side. How rare. Yao Hua and the others put their palms together and chanted a Buddhist mantra. They shook their heads and sighed. Why don't we go shopping? Yin carried Ming and Little Purple Soul. She looked at the shaking room and turned to Jin Wang, Yao Hua, and the others. Good idea. Everyone nodded and walked out of the courtyard. And at this time, in the room that was constantly emitting smoke, Uxin's pretty face was covered in sweat, which converged into streams and slid down. And in front of her, a 3-meter wide blue array was rapidly condensing. From a dot appearing in the air to condensing, it only took 5 seconds. That pair of crescent-shaped eyes had an extremely gorgeous color flowing within them. It was a pair of very exquisite eyes. No, 5 seconds. If the enemy sneaks up on you, they can get close to you in an instant. It only takes a thought. On the side, there was a little girl who looked about 10 years old. She had her arms crossed and was looking at Uxin with a sharp gaze. Every time an array appeared, she would sigh and say that it wasn't enough. If those array masters heard this, they would definitely have black lines on their faces. 5 seconds for an array was too slow. Then shouldn't they buy a block of tofu and smash themselves to death? Compress all the output energy toward the center. Keep compressing until you feel like you can't hold it in anymore. Uxin smiled bitterly. This girl used to be in existence at the level of an array grandmaster. Now that she was lecturing her, it was as if she had turned into a different person. She was just a moment ago twisting and turning, but now she had turned into a stern teacher. Knowing that she cultivated the evil spirit eye, which had the ability to weave, analyze, and break magic circles, Yishi's interest was piqued. She pulled Uxin to a secret room to cultivate. Every leader of the Abyss Temple is a magic circle grandmaster. There are tens of thousands of small teams inside, enough to sweep through half of the origin region. Thinking of her words, Yu Exan couldn't help but sigh. A temple could sweep through half of the origin region. If there were no other forces of the same level, wouldn't they be able to dominate the origin region? 2 hours later, the manor was in a mess because of the continuous rumbling. Uxin finally couldn't stand the high-intensity training. Her mental strength and soul force were exhausted, and she collapsed on the soft bed. I'm going to die. My head feels like it's going to be torn apart. Seeing her so tired that she couldn't even keep her evil spirit eye open and collapsed on the bed, Yishi's heart ached. She climbed onto the bed and gently massaged Yu Xion's temples. Big Brother Nuo, don't blame little Shi for being too ruthless. If Big Brother wants the purple night dark flame, just relying on the light element isn't enough. However, it's also impossible to raise your cultivation by much in a short period of time. Big Brother Nuo, the only way to raise your strength in a short period of time is through magic circles. As long as you can comprehend magic circles well, even with a mortal body, it's not impossible for you to defeat a beginner god powerhouse. However, in terms of energy, you'll need something else to assist you. You only have one chance. The soft little hand gently massaged Yu Xion's head. It was a little cold, and Yu Xion felt a lot more comfortable. She closed her eyes and enjoyed it very much. However, if it's about magic circles, I'll have to go to Sacred Weapon Divine Palace. I don't know why they haven't come yet. Could it be that they don't have any thoughts about the purple night dark flame? Yu Xion's chin rested on her arms, and she couldn't help but sigh. Don't worry. Sacred Weapon Divine Palace is a large refining sect. They also have thoughts about the divine flame. It's just that they haven't come yet. The purple night dark flame won't erupt that quickly. If it comes, that old boy will tell Big Brother Nuo. Yishi smiled. Old boy. Yu Xion was stunned. She slightly raised her head, looked at Yi Shi, and said, Little Shi, do you know Jin Wang? Yi Shi nodded. Seeing the curiosity in Yu Xion's eyes, she couldn't help but sigh, and slowly said, Originally, she wouldn't have said these things to Yu Xion, but seeing her like this, it wouldn't be good to hide it. Is it an old flame? As she spoke, Yu Xion blurted out. Yishi's pretty face stiffened, and she rolled her eyes. Her little hand couldn't help but pat Yu Xion's waist, and she said angrily, What nonsense are you talking about? Back then, I don't know how many young men knelt before me. The line from Shenzhou to Taiyuan City. Even if there was someone I liked, it wouldn't be that silly boy's turn. Then no. Yishi rolled her eyes and said, Stop gossiping. Rest for 10 minutes and continue training. If you can't open the magic circle in 2 seconds today, don't even think about sleeping. Yu Xion screamed. 2 seconds. What are you shouting for? If you can't compress the energy to the point of qualitative change in 10 days, you'll be punished with a month of seclusion. This time, before Yu Xion could call out, her mouth was sealed by a small hand, causing her to roll her eyes. Also, we'll go out and practice at night. Yu Xion completely rolled her eyes. Wasn't practicing at night disturbing the people? Don't worry. Seeing Yu Xion roll her eyes, Yishi knew what she was thinking. She immediately smiled mysteriously, and her little hand grabbed Yu Xion's collar, and she dragged her into the secret room. As the two walked into the secret room, the entire manor began to shake rhythmically. At night, when people came back and saw the damaged house, they couldn't help but sweat. The Gold God Kings group didn't say anything as they quietly cleaned up. When they got in and saw Yu Xion sleeping because she had used up her soul and mental energy, they all murmured, Immeasurable heavenly sovereign. After lying down for 2 hours, under Yu Yin's distressed gaze, Yu Xion hurriedly ate a mouthful of food. Yu Xion had just caught her breath when she saw Yi Shi's little hand dancing like lightning. In just a moment, a small space door opened in the space, just big enough for one person to pass through. Darling, go early and come back early. Yu Yin very sadly looked at Yu Xion being dragged into the space door by a small figure. She sighed, and the latter rolled her eyes. Jin Wang and the others couldn't help but shake their heads. Then, they glared at Yao Hua and the others who were having fun, and their eyes lit up. Suddenly feeling a chill, Yao Hua and the others trembled and turned their heads stiffly. They saw the three god kings looking at them with evil intentions, and the corners of their mouths curved into evil smiles. This made them understand something, and they couldn't help but swallow their saliva. God kings, I think we still need to rest for a while. Yao Hua trembled as he said this. Lei Ming, Mu Ling, and the others all shrank behind him and nodded in agreement, saying that they still needed to rest. Rest your head. Don't you see that Xin is cultivating day and night? When both sides are done with their seclusion, if the 9 of you can't kill her, then go back and wait for hell's training. 9 mournful wails resounded through the sky. Yuyin was rather interested as she brought along the 2 little girls and watched as they went to receive their training with bitter faces. For a moment, only the beautiful woman and a few elders were left in the courtyard drinking tea on the boundless grassland. A bright moon scattered its cold moonlight. There was no one around, and 2 black figures stood on a small hill under a big tree. They were one with the shadow, and if one didn't look carefully, it would be hard to notice them. This place is? Looking at the boundless grassland world and the bright moon in the sky, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but be stunned. Where's he sent to? This is the world I created, a world that belongs to me. Yishi stood not far from him with her hands behind her back. She said softly, a netherworld king expert can create a world that relies on spiritual energy, and a netherworld emperor can add complete elements to this new world, creating another world. As for the details, you will know when you reach the netherworld emperor. Luckily, I accidentally touched it and found that this world didn't get destroyed with the drop in cultivation. No one. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. That depends on whether you want people to live here or not. Creating life, I can't do that. Yishi smiled mischievously. Then, her charming face turned serious, and her calm voice carried some sternness. Then, let's start training. You're only allowed to use arrays. I will attack, and you will run. I will not use my full strength, and you can use your evil spirit eyes to break my arrays. Of course, you can also defend and counterattack. If you are hit by me once, you will have to carve 100 more arrays tomorrow. Ugh. Yin Nuoxing almost spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. Then, run as fast as you can. Yishi focused slightly. The moment she finished speaking, the space behind her suddenly lit up with countless rays of light. Dozens of arrays instantly appeared, and Yin Nuoxing sucked in a breath of cold air. She didn't use her full strength. Wong. Without waiting for him to react, dozens of energy light pillars, with an earth-shattering momentum, came crashing down. In that instant, Yin Nuoxing's handsome face froze. Chapter 133. Try your best to run or defend. Dear brother, the brilliant silver-blue energy covered the sky and formed a vast silver-blue sky. The energy that whizzed past made Yin Nuoxing gulp. Without another word, he turned around and ran. The earth-shaking rumble exploded behind him. A wave of air blasted onto Yin Nuoxing, causing him to tremble. He used this force to charge out and widen the distance between them. Before he could stop, he felt a terrifying energy lick at his neck. He quickly turned around and saw a mass of energy coming at him. He took a deep breath and moved his hands like lightning. His soul and spiritual power surged out. A huge formation bloomed in front of him and enveloped all the energy that surged over. The massive energy beams plunged into the formation and rapidly disintegrated into raw energy. A portion of it was fed back to Yin Nuoxing through the formation, but most of it dissipated in the air. Little girl, I can split. Yin Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief. Just as the corner of his mouth curled up into a smile, it froze in an instant. He saw that behind the petite black figure 1,000 feet away, over 100 pieces of formation suddenly appeared. The pieces of azure formation dripped and spun, causing the former's jaw to almost drop to the ground. The disintegration formation also has an upper limit. Brother Nuoxing, the laughter was accompanied by a torrential amount of energy. At this moment, Yin Nuashing could feel cold sweat dripping down his back. He quickly formed a seal with both of his hands. The array in front of him quickly grew in size. In a few breaths' time, it had grown to 100 feet in size. Then the energy curtain violently slammed into it. Hundreds of energy beams crashed into the disintegration formation. However, he heard the sound of smoke coming out. Yin Nuashing looked over in shock. He saw that the massive energy seemed to be corrosive. Although it would dissipate after passing through the formation, it would also cause holes to appear in the disintegration formation. Gotcha! In just a short moment, the hundreds of energy beams had passed through the formation. There was a series of shattering sounds. Then, the 1,000-foot-large formation disappeared along with the hundreds of energy beams. The moment the formation disappeared, Yin Nuashing saw a dense energy curtain rushing over like lightning. His pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a needle. His 6 wings uncontrollably shot out from his back as he retreated like a bolt of lightning. Boom! The energy exploded, kicking up a cloud of dust. Suddenly, hundreds of energy beams shot out like slender dragons, chasing after the rapidly retreating figure. Brother Nuashing, don't run. Seeing Yin Nuashing quickly escape, Yishi could not help but laugh. She tapped her feet on the ground, and 2 formations appeared under her feet. Then, she stepped on the formations and chased after Yin Nuashing. The hundreds of formations behind her also quickly caught up. The energy beams of light seemed to have eyes as they chased after Yin Nuashing. There's something I don't want to say. Yin Nuashing's figure flew through the dense energy beams like a swift. When he felt the burning sensation on his face, he shuddered and hurriedly changed directions. However, the energy beams also changed directions rapidly and chased after him as if they wanted to follow him to the ends of the earth. Yin Nuashing's 6 wings flapped rapidly. His hands did not remain idle as he formed seals one after another. Many formations of varying sizes also appeared around him. As soon as they appeared, energy beams of light shot towards the energy beams that were chasing after him, destroying them in midair. Little Shi, can you reduce it by half? He waved his hands in the air in a flurry. Formations were formed and destroyed one after another. Gradually, the formation speed of the formations could not keep up with the formation speed of the energy beams chasing after him. His figure also paused because he was inscribing formations. The energy beams blasted his body, causing him to wail in pain. 1, 2, 3, 33, 34. Yishi stepped on 2 formations, covering several hundred meters with each step. She caught up to Yin Nuashing effortlessly. She even counted the number of attacks that Yin Nuashing was hit with interest. She giggled and said, "Not bad." Yin Nuashing heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that. However, he saw that the formations floating behind, she suddenly trembled slightly. Every piece split into a new formation. Hundreds of them were connected together, forming a huge formation. It was especially dazzling under the night sky. Yin Nuashing's handsome face also paled because of this dazzling light. 10,000 formation continuous shooting. Yishi extended her small hand and pointed at Yin Nuashing. Yishi laughed out loud, while Yin Nuashing sucked in a cold breath. Boom! As hundreds and thousands of energy beams shot out continuously, Yin Nuashing felt that he could not avoid them. The energy beams that were chasing after him were much faster than him. His agility was not as fast as Yishi's control. He could only endure them head-on. His hands came together at lightning speed. Formations were quickly drawn behind him. Then they split into 2. In less than 10 seconds, 400 to 500 formations appeared behind him. At the same time, his 6 wings flapped continuously. He rode the wind elements and retreated far away. He looked at the energy beams in the sky that were rushing towards him. He clenched his teeth and snapped his right finger. Ta! Following a soft sound, a large amount of energy shot out rapidly. In terms of volume, a few hundred of them could completely match up to a few thousand of them. However, Just as Yin Nuashing was staring intently at the collision of the two energies, he discovered that half of the few hundred of them that he had shot out were quickly annihilated. Then, they quickly rushed towards him. Why? Looking at the annihilation of less than a tenth of the energy group, Yin Nuashing jumped in fright. Light elements rushed out from the soles of his feet, and in a flash, he retreated a few thousand meters. At his original position, only the sounds of energy explosions were left. The flames illuminated the night sky, causing him to wipe his sweat at once. Brother Nua, you're not allowed to use the light elements. Yishi smiled as if she didn't care. She took a step forward and instantly appeared before Yin Nuashing. That instant was like teleportation. He didn't even have time to react before he saw a golden array being pressed between her eyebrows through her pinky finger. Yin Nuashing's heart skipped a beat. Light elements gathered at his feet. Just as he took a step back, he was shocked to find that the light that had just gathered into a ball gradually dimmed until it disappeared. Brother Nua, formation speed is slow. Energy compression is insufficient. Also, I'm in a hurry. Yishi frowned slightly and pouted. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. This won't do. Looks like I'll have to increase the intensity of the training. Yishi sighed. With a thought, the 1,000 or so formations behind her were duplicated a few more times. They were duplicated a few more times. The entire formation was estimated to be 10,000 zhong in size. This caused Yin Nuashing's pale face to become even paler. Calm down, take a deep breath. Yin Nuashing muttered in his heart. He took a deep breath, and his evil spirit eyes suddenly widened. Formations appeared in front of his eyes. His soul strength and mental strength surged out like a tide and spread towards Yishi. Feeling a powerful soul strength swim past her, Yishi's mouth curled into a smile. She raised her right hand and waved it down. Evil spirit eye, interference. With a shout in his heart, the formation around Yin Nuashing's eyes suddenly rotated. His soul strength adhered to the 10,000 zhong large formation. Suddenly, the formation seemed to be stuck and slowly stopped rotating. Let me do it. His hands danced in front of him, creating afterimages. His soul strength and mental strength were open to the maximum. Formations were quickly drawn and condensed in front of him. Then they suddenly shattered. Hundreds and thousands of energy beams shot out from the formation. They swept through the void and brought about whistling sounds. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived in front of Yishi. The majestic energy made her raise her eyebrows and smile. 1 second too fast. His sleeves slowly swept through the void. A 10,000 zhong wide blue formation instantly appeared in front of him. There was no process of drawing it. It was as if it had already been prepared. Yin Nuashing was startled. He stamped his feet on the void, and another 1,000 formations quickly appeared in front of him. Woo! However, when the formation appeared this time, his body suddenly trembled. A feeling of emptiness appeared in his mind, and even his vision became blurry. Wong! Several thousand strands of energy rushed into the huge formation. However, without exception, when they passed through the formation, their trajectories were all distorted and scattered. Some even directly collided with each other, causing bursts of energy to explode. However, Yishi didn't move from beginning to end. It was as if she knew those strands of energy couldn't hit her. Clenching his teeth and enduring the pain in his mind, Yin Nuashing put his hands together. The formation in front of him quietly squirmed and overlapped with each other. Finally, it formed an exquisite formation that looked like a lotus flower. The yuan force in his body continuously flowed into the formation. Finally, all the energy was gathered at the center of the formation. Pong! With a gentle wave of Yishi's sleeve, a shattering sound rang out. In the next instant, the 10,000 Daos array that was being interfered with by the evil spirit suddenly broke free from its bindings. Then, it rapidly separated and started to revolve. Waves of energy seemed to have received a huge force as they were squeezed into the center of the array. In just a short moment, droplets of azure light could be seen appearing in the center of the array, as energy ripples spread out like water. Brother Nuwa, you've already been hit 300 times. I hope that you won't increase it later. Yishi's soft laughter fell into Yun Nuoxing's ears, but it made his face twitch. He snorted softly, grabbed at the air in front of him, and crossed his hands together. Then, the 1,000-shard and 10,000-shard arrays suddenly shot out brilliant energy screens. Boom! Brilliant energy fireworks exploded in the sky. The heaven and earth were filled with thunderous explosions. Tens of thousands of energy beams twisted together and formed a huge energy storm. All the energy beams that shot into it were sucked into it. It was like a tornado that spun crazily. Condense. A low shout came from his throat. Just as the 1,000 Daos formation was about to disappear, Yun Nuoxing clasped his hands together. The 1,000 illusory Daos formation suddenly became solid. They condensed into 1,000 feet large Daos formation. Then it shot out. The 1,000 feet large energy beam whizzed past. Even space felt distorted. It rushed straight into the energy storm, causing it to stop spinning. Then it rushed towards Yishi, who was stunned for a moment. The pressure that covered the heaven and earth made her feel as if she was facing a ferocious beast. Turn. However, Yishi did not panic. She gently pushed her hands forward. The 1,000 feet large Daos formation that could distort the trajectory suddenly started to rotate. Then, the 1,000 feet large energy beam pierced into it in the most destructive way possible. Boom! A rumble resounded through the sky. The energy beam was sliced apart after it entered the formation. However, Yishi's body was still as insignificant as an ant when compared to the size of the formation. As for the energy beam, it was also forcefully distorted as it shot towards Yishi. Yishi couldn't help but be startled. She took a small step to the left, and the huge pillar of energy whizzed past where she had just been standing, completely submerging that area. It was like a heaven-shaking dragon, letting out a thunderous roar. Looking at the energy beam that whizzed past, Yishi turned around and looked behind her. As she watched it gradually disappear, she could not help but sigh. If she had not taken that step, she would have been hit. The distance is too close. It is difficult to shift such a huge attack in such a short period of time. Yishi sighed and shook her head as she muttered to herself. In the past, I could shift all the energy with just a thought. Yun Nuoxing flapped his 6 wings and slowly landed on the ground. As soon as he landed, he knelt down with one leg. His chest rose and fell rapidly, and his handsome face was somewhat pale. The last attack just now was his last struggle. He had gathered all of his origin power. Now, he did not even have the strength to stand. He only wanted to find a big bed, lie down, and sleep forever. To be able to do this on your first day, that's pretty good. Your formation speed is 1 second faster, and your attack power is compressed a bit more. Especially your last attack conversion and consecutive attacks. Let me give you a small compliment. Yishi gently landed in front of Yun Nuoxing, and her clear voice made Yun Nuoxing smile bitterly. Yishi patted Yun Nuoxing's head with her small hand and smiled sweetly. She said softly, "Big brother Na, you did well." Of course, if other people who cultivated spirit arrays heard this, they might even have the urge to commit suicide. This was not bad. The duplication and condensation of spirit arrays, especially the weaving of spirit arrays, was something that only someone close to the level of a great master could do. Of course, Yun Nuoxing did not know about this. Yishi was also a little surprised. This was almost the starting point of the master level. She could not help but feel a little envious. When she first started learning formations, she had to use her hands to weave them slowly. It took her half an hour to weave a basin-sized formation. If it was Yun Nuoxing, it was something that could be done with just a thought and a hand. Yun Nuoxing curled his lips. He did not know, but being praised by Yishi, he was more or less happy. However, just as he smiled, his face turned bitter again. You still have to work hard tomorrow. You still have to go back and weave the formation just now 3,000 times. After 3,000 times, you can forget about this common grade 3 formation and learn another common grade 8 formation. When you can weave an immortal grade formation with the same state and speed as before, I will teach you the correct method of weaving a divine grade formation. Yi, she said with a light smile, making Yun Nuoxing's face turn dark. Chapter 134. Time was like water. It would always flow through the gaps between one's fingers without them noticing. The scorching summer sun was pushed away by the clear autumn. The lush green branches also began to be mixed with a bit of yellow. It was still the boundless grassland. The sun shone down, and the green grass rippled like waves. In the sky above the grassland, two figures were flying rapidly. One of them was flapping his 6 wings rapidly. Beside him, rays of light flickered. Meanwhile, the petite figure behind him was stepping on 2 formations. Each step covered 1,000 meters. The two of them maintained a delicate balance. After more than half a year of bitter cultivation, the young man's face had become more composed. His tightly pursed lips revealed a bit of perseverance and stubbornness. His skin was as white and translucent as a woman's, reflecting the rays of the sun. His body was enveloped in brilliance, and the scene was beautiful and pleasant. I have to hit her once today. Constantly dodging the energy that flashed past his body, a confident thought suddenly appeared in Yun Nuoxing's mind. It came without any reason, but it was like water flowing naturally, appearing openly in his mind. In the past half a year, Yun Nuoxing had gradually gone from being beaten to being able to resist. In the end, he could even counterattack a few times. Of course, most of the attacks were distorted by the huge formation in front of Yishi. Opening a formation and maintaining its existence requires a constant output of soul power at a certain amount and a certain speed. In the past battles, it was always Yun Nuoxing who was sitting while the enemy was running. He really didn't have to worry about not being able to maintain it. He didn't need to be distracted too much. However, being chased and bombarded like this immediately made his shortcomings show. Yun Nuoxing could not help but sweat when he turned back to look at the formation that was 10,000 meters wide and the tens of thousands of formations that were 10,000 meters wide. Just how much spiritual strength was required to maintain such a large number of formations at the same time, and to allow anyone to attack them in an orderly manner. He looked around himself. There were only a dozen or so formations maintained. There was even an energy decomposition formation that was 10 meters wide behind him. Yun Nuoxing's spiritual strength could only maintain this continuous output for 2 hours. After all, Yishi was once an underworld emperor. Her spiritual strength was unimaginably powerful. Even if her cultivation fell, her spiritual strength did not weaken. It was just that the amount of spiritual strength that she could output at once had changed. No matter what, I must do it today. Yun Nuoxing took a deep breath and glanced behind her. Her 6 wings flapped violently, creating a gust of wind. Her figure accelerated once again. Seeing him suddenly accelerate, Yishi's eyes narrowed. Then she smiled. I've been running for half a year. It's about time I let Brother Nual lie down. As soon as she finished muttering to herself, Yishi took another step forward. The power of the 2 formations under her feet increased as she tried to catch up. However, the moment she took a step forward, Yun Nuoxing's figure suddenly stopped in the air like a nail. She stretched her legs forward and a formation appeared under her feet. She stomped on the ground and her figure shot out like an arrow, causing ear-piercing explosions. With a thought, thousands of formations appeared in the blink of an eye and condensed behind her. Then, her evil spirit eyes suddenly opened. Wong! The moment Yishi took a step forward, she saw that Yun Nuoxing was only 10 feet away from her. Furthermore, she was charging towards her. She was stunned for a moment. Then, with a thought, the formation that could distort the attack's trajectory retracted and began to revolve. Interfere. Seeing the formation move, Yun Nuoxing let out a sinister laugh. Her evil spirit eyes suddenly revolved and stared at the formation. Waves of soul power surged out and firmly locked onto it. Seeing the formation in front of her suddenly freeze, Mei Mao froze. She stepped on the formation and took a step back. Interfere. In the blink of an eye, they had passed through the distorted formation that had not been activated yet. Yin Nuo Xing hurriedly removed its control and turned to seal the two formations beneath Yishi's feet. Then, the 1,000 formations behind them suddenly shot out thousands of energy light pillars. "You're too naive, Brother Nuo." Yishi giggled. With a wave of her wide sleeve, a 30-meter wide formation appeared in front of her. A powerful force rapidly condensed. Then, like a wave of water, it violently spread out and blasted towards Yin Nuoxing, who was charging over like a pack of wolves and tigers. "I'll be taking your formation." Yin Nuoxing let out a sinister laugh. Her evil spirit had been staring at the two formations that could shrink the ground under her feet. She had already finished analyzing them. Then, she quickly drew them under her feet. Before the energy could hit him, she brought him behind, Yishi in a flash. Boom! Thousands of energy beams collided with the enormous energy. A terrifying energy storm bloomed in the sky, and both sides were destroyed. "Huh!" Yin Nuoxing's hand seals changed as he lightly shouted. Immediately, more than a dozen arrays appeared around Yishi. In an instant, dozens of chains shot out to bind her. Her body was bound in an instant, but Yishi's expression didn't change. With a thought, the thousands upon thousands of small formations wriggled rapidly. Then, under Yin Nuoxing's astonished expression, the patterns at the center of the formations suddenly changed. They were like small snakes that were slithering about, and it only took a short moment for the transformation to complete. After that, a terrifying wave of energy that carried terrifying destructive force shot out furiously. Boom! A huge amount of energy exploded in the void. It was as if a sun was blooming behind her. Feeling the waves of energy behind her, Yishi couldn't help but smile and praise in her heart. In the past half a year, this was the closest Yin Nuo had come to her. In the past, he had tried to dive down, but before he could get close to her, he had been sent flying. She didn't expect that this time he would be able to get close to her. The evil spirit is quite powerful to be able to analyze and copy my arrays. However, this one's grade is not high, so it can copy quickly. If it were a deity spirit it wouldn't be so easy. Yishi thought to herself, but just as she was about to turn around, she heard footsteps. The light footsteps seemed insignificant under the sweeping sound of the storm. If one did not listen carefully, it would be difficult to hear them. Suddenly, her expression changed slightly. She turned around abruptly and saw a huge formation floating in front of Yin Nuoxing. It was spinning rapidly. The outline looked like an energy decomposition formation, but there were traces of her formation that distorted the trajectory of her attacks. "It's been copied." Boom! The hundreds and thousands of formations behind her were completely imprinted on the dense formation in front of her. A thunderous boom sounded, and in an instant, the two formations were destroyed, tearing a hole in the formation. Yin Nuoxing flapped her 6 wings and rushed in with a gust of wind. Her right palm swiftly struck out. Seeing that Yin Nuoxing had already broken through the last defensive formation, Yishi hurriedly took a step back. However, the formation beneath her feet gave her a stiff feeling, causing her face to change slightly. She lowered her head. As expected, it had already stopped operating. The chains that were wrapped around her body were also pulled, causing her to be unable to move. Yin Nuoxing let out a sinister laugh. The resplendent, evil spirit fell into her eyes, causing her face to turn pale. "Heya!" Yin Nuoxing roared angrily. A formation suddenly appeared on her right palm, and she slammed it towards Yishi. As for the latter, seeing the speed that was difficult to dodge, she smiled slightly and slowly closed her eyes. Just as Yishi closed her eyes and her long eyelashes trembled slightly, thinking that she would receive a heavy blow, she felt a warm palm gently caressing her head. Furthermore, the feeling of restraint on her body had disappeared. This caused her to pause, and she hurriedly opened her eyes. However, she saw Yin Nuoxing looking at her with a smile. His eyes were filled with tenderness, and he was gently caressing her hair. That comfortable feeling made her feel a little intoxicated. Little she, I won. Not bad, right? Yin Nuoxing grinned. However, he secretly glanced back. His long black hair was now somewhat pale. At the last moment, he had used some of his life force and strength into formation to forcefully tear a gap in Yi Shi's dense formation. Then, he had locked onto the two teleportation formations. Only then was he lucky enough to get close to her, of course. If she had not thought that she could directly make him lie down and not move, he would not have been able to get close to her so easily. At that time, all she had to do was take a step and put some distance between them. Then, today's effort would have been wasted. Yin Nuoxing gently caressed Yishi's head as he said softly, I've been thinking about your distorted orbit formation since the first day I saw it. For the past half a year, I've been using the evil spirit eye to analyze and copy it. However, it's just too big. Moreover, I can't sit down and slowly analyze it. I can only rub half of what I see into the decomposition formation, modifying the formation. Brother Nuoxing, hearing this, Yishi bitterly laughed. She should say that the evil spirit I was too powerful, or that Yin Nuoxing's talent was too abnormal. The difficulty of modifying a formation was the same as creating a new formation, or even a little more difficult. However, from his mouth, it sounded like something ordinary. This was something that even a formation grandmaster might not be able to do, of course, if Yishi knew that Yin Nuoxing had once rubbed 5 elemental conversion formations together and was able to operate normally. Who knew what she would think? All of this was due to the evil spirit eye. In the past half a year of training, he had become much more proficient in controlling it. Ordinary mortal-level formations could be analyzed with a single glance, and he could even use his soul energy to break them. Yin Nuoxing smiled as he carried Yi Shi and pressed her head on his shoulder. He smiled and said, Let's go out. I want to sleep for a while. Oh, right. Suddenly thinking of something, he turned his eyes and stared at Yi Shi in his arms. He smiled mysteriously and said, Little Shi, the reward. What is it? Hearing him mention this, Yi Shi couldn't help but roll her eyes. If he didn't mention it, she would have forgotten. In the past half a year of training, he didn't even need her to spur him on. She was very satisfied with Yin Nuoxing's enthusiasm, and he almost never mentioned resting. Now, he could already maintain the continuous output of at least 100 formations. With the cooperation of the evil spirit eye, it was normal for him to improve so quickly. Could it be a deity-level formation? What level is it? No problem. I'm not a picky eater, just give me 2 pieces. Of course, if you can give me a set. That would be even better. Yin Nuoxing was talking nonstop when he suddenly stopped. Her cherry lips gently pressed against his cheek, and she stopped for a long time, so long that his handsome face was completely red. Only then did Yishi retract her head and roll her eyes at him. What are you thinking about? I can give you the deity-level formation, but it's still the same condition. When you use the immortal-level formation and defeat me like today, I'll teach you. After saying that, she even threw a flirtatious glance, causing Yin Nuoxing's blushing handsome face to return to normal. He bitterly smiled and rubbed Yi Shi's head. This girl, you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.